Chapter 661 Gamble. Lonely Rider. The vampire form gave Redfield a long-lost youth. His voice was powerful and full of energy. I can't believe that after so many years, there are still people who remember the old man's name. Ryder looked at Loya silently, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. You are the strongest, Ice Dragon, Loya in their mouths. You killed that kid with Whitebeard. With Redfield's credentials, Whitebeard is indeed a kid. Because he was already famous long before the Battle of Idwal. Yes, what's the problem? Facing Loya's slightly opened eyes, Ryder suddenly felt a tremendous force pressing down on him, causing the umbrella he was stalking to be inserted directly into the deck. This power. Conqueror's Haki. No, what else? In addition to being horrified, Ryder glanced at Guy around him, but found that he didn't notice it at all, just frowned and found himself strange. How is that possible? Even the Whitebeard in his prime doesn't have this kind of control. What kind of monster is this kid? Ryder was secretly frightened. This time, it seemed like a very wrong decision to take the lead for Guy and grab the historical text of the road sign in the hands of Blackbeard, Titch. The force was released as soon as it was released, and Ryder's vest was instantly soaked with cold sweat. Looking at Loya's eyes, which is no different from ordinary people's aura, Ryder's mouth twitched and replied, No, I'm fine. This is soft. Guy looked at him in disbelief. He didn't understand why this guy who really wanted to fight and he was afraid at 3 points suddenly confessed. What the hell just happened? As everyone knows, after saying that sentence, Ryder is also full of bitterness. He thought that Guy Duo was the strongest member of this era. Guy Duo said that the ice dragon that dominates the new world would not be too outrageous. He didn't expect to find out after meeting that the strength of the other party was beyond his reach. This big guy is just really harmful. There was an MMP stuck in his throat, which made Ryder not vomit. But he didn't dare, because Loya spoke again, and he wasn't talking to him. The reason you went to war against Titch was for the historical text of the road sign, right? Guy's face changed several times, and finally said sullenly, Yes. The historical text that was brought out from Turtle Island, one is in my hands, and the other is in Tiki's hands. The plan had all collapsed the moment Ryder confessed. Zue kept winking, and it was very unlikely that Guy didn't see it. At this time, let's take his advice. Very good, you are very honest. Loya clapped his hands and changed his sitting position. You all know that the new world I hope to see is a peaceful and stable new world. Letting you fight is not an option. The two sides did not speak. They were stronger than others, and it was useless to talk too much. Or else, Loya thought for a while and said, although you deliberately chose a no-man's land to fight, the islands in the nearby waters are still affected. It is better to send high-level officials directly to engage in gambling battles. Quote. Gamble. Titch frowned, and he had an ominous foreboding in his heart. That's right. Loya smiled, with an enthusiastic smile on his face. I can guarantee that I am not interested in that thing and will not snatch it. Because, you can't be the Pirate King at all, just take it if you want. Take it. As soon as these words came out, Guy Duo and Titch's faces turned dark. Indeed, before they had the strength to deal with Loya, even if they grabbed the historical text of the road sign in the other's hands, they would not be able to become one piece. But, since you still have that ridiculous dream, then take it out and bet it. Whoever wins, the historical text will be given to whoever. Suddenly, Loya changed his words and revealed his plan. That's a good idea. Guy smiled coldly, looking at Tiki in the distance with murderous intent. Then speak with your fists and see who can survive. Even if he can't become one piece, Tiki's betrayal is too much for Guy to tolerate. He just got smarter, not the virgin. Guy is mostly a pirate, Tiki is the enemy, that's all. No. Titch screamed suddenly. They have Redfield on their side, and no one on our side can match it. Isn't this a must? This guy is out of the question. Choate was speechless, feeling more and more disappointed in Titch. Ryder is now in his 80s, but what appears in front of them is the face of a mature man. Obviously, he was restored to his youth by the power of some kind of devil fruit. As a dark fruit person, the nemesis of all devil fruit ability users, Tiki actually said such words directly. It seems that his previous introduction has left a shadow on him. A guy who doesn't dare to look forward, even if he gets all the historical text of the road signs, he can't become one piece. Growing a beard was imitating Whitebeard, and Choate could see it clearly. Even now, Tich has not stepped out of the shadow brought by the white beard, and tried to imitate it so that he can believe that he has become stronger. But at this moment, there is another Redfield that Tich is afraid of. What's the use of such a captain? After thinking for a while, Choate leaned over and said in a low voice, "Captain, this is what Loya meant. If you don't agree, he'll probably kill us directly." No, I am the fourth emperor, and the new world needs the fourth emperor to maintain stability." Innocent. Choate sneered inwardly, but continued to persuade him. What Loya needs is stability, a ruler who can maintain stability. With his power, is it difficult to kill us and support a fourth emperor again? Don't you forget. Now, the rest of Whitebeard is in the new world, but it is second only to the power of our four emperors. Indeed it is. When Tich heard this, his face was instantly blue. What if he was ambitious? Loya uses force to oppress people, and if he refuses to accept, he will kill. If he refuses, they don't need Guy to take more shots, they have to be buried in Loya's hands first. Sighing silently, Tiki nodded helplessly and said to Loya, "Okay. We agree." A very smart choice. Loya heard the exchange between the two clearly, glanced at Jot with a little scrutiny, and then continued, "The rules are very simple. There is an uninhabited archipelago where gambling battles are held. The rules adopt a best-of-3 game system, captain to captain, cadre to cadre, foreign aid to foreign aid." Foreign aid. The rest of the Blackbeard pirates looked at Loya suspiciously. The first two were understandable. After all, that was the default rule among the pirates, but where did they come from foreign aid? Suddenly, a figure appeared beside Tiki, and the strong aroma of Yuhi tea reminded Tiki of those two sharp sword lights. "Huh." Taking a sip of Yuhi tea, Ulysses said calmly, "I am your foreign aid. That Redfield, leave it to me." Blood count. Ulysses. Hearing this voice, the well-informed Choate felt a chill all over his body, and he was a little unsteady in holding the jug. The island where he was born and raised was destroyed by Ulysses when he woke up one time. Only he survived because he was drunk and forgot to tie the rope, and the sailboat floated to the sea. In the end, he became a pirate. The strongest dark fruit ability on the island, under the Bloodchi Purgatory, can only hold up until his physical strength is exhausted and he dies. Yes. Jot instantly figured out the reason why Loya would do this. Apart from the historical text and the hatred in the past, as a former vampire fruit power user, Ulysses would definitely not allow the fruit power he used to fall into the hands of a waste. In other words, the Redfield on the opposite side is going to be out of luck. Chapter 662 Bugs and Giants. But what Choate thought was not something Tich could know. He only saw Ulysses standing on their side, and a surge of ecstasy flooded his heart. PFF ha ha ha. That's it, that's for sure. In The Crown of the King, Tich is still very clear about the horror of Ulysses' blood shadow. He admits that he and Ryder can't get along with him now, and the outcome is only in June or 4. But if Ulysses was the one who appeared, it would be another situation. Unlike Tich's ecstasy, Guy was multifaceted, and Ryder frowned. That guy, sure enough, isn't alive. And the blood power in the opponent's body that is so rich and ultimate, even if he is a vampire, he can feel a kind of suffocation. Blood Lord, former, Blood Count, Ulysses. As a veteran, Ryder naturally knows this powerful man who has been hidden in history. Not only did the bloody smell not frighten him, it made him excited. Looking at Ulysses, Ryder said seriously, "I will prove that this fruit, only I can exert the most powerful power." "Oh, Then I'll wait and see. Ulysses was careless and casual. Under the supervision of the Loya Dragon ship fleet, the two sides slowly separated their formations. Then, the ice wolf under Loya's butt slowly stepped forward and walked forward. 300 nautical miles away, this is indeed an uninhabited archipelago. Don't look at the smallest area here as comparable to a small island, but no one wants to settle here, because it's too desolate. Looking around, there is no grass, no life. There are no mines, no cherished beasts, and nothing. Even the fish tide only approaches once in a few years. It is a place that is truly forgotten by the world. Except for the worms living in the soil, and some small beasts that feed on worms, there is no breath of life. The most important thing is that this island is smooth and flat, like a round cake, which is very suitable for fighting. To ask why Loya knows about this island. In fact, it is not relying on the intelligence collected by the undead, but the initiator of this phenomenon, and at this moment, he pretends to be calm in his sea of consciousness. Ivy appeared very early in the world of One Piece, long before the term Tianlong people appeared. According to her, once she had a party with a giant sea king. They robbed most of the wine in the waterway. Animals are delicious. Then, she asked a question. Then are you delicious? As a result, things developed towards a certain kind of happy situation. Ivy lost, and the animal flesh in the sea was even more delicious. And this place is where she grills the barbecue. God see it with pity. Among the giant sea kings, there are only a few with high intelligence, but Ivy roasted one unexpectedly. The Whale Island, which is far away from this place, is the fossils of the leftover bones. Different from Loya's human thinking, Ivy is a real giant dragon, eating other intelligent creatures without any psychological burden. The more I communicated with Ivy, the more peaceful Loya's mentality became, because something was really so nasty. At the place, the representatives of both sides disembarked in turn. Guy are naturally Guy and Redfield. In addition, the only one who has combat power, Insect Plague, Betsy, got off the ship together as a representative of the Cadres. In terms of Tick, the captain of Tick and Ulysses needless to say, but as the representative of the Cadres, it is the behemoth that Loya said was an eye-opener when he saw it. Giant battleship, San Juan Bad Wolf. He's a giant, yes, but among giants, he's also an oddball. Just sitting there is like a high mountain, and you can push the clouds away from the sky. Loya considers himself to be big enough, but compared to San Juan Evil Wolf, he only reaches the opponent's waist from head to tail. Based on the size alone, among the currently known creatures, I am afraid that only those giant sea kings that can only live in the deep sea, and the Zuawu giant elephant can be bigger than him. Teach's intention is obvious, he wants to use his size to consume Becky to death. The rest are human-sized, and wounded is wounded. However, the fatal wound for humans, I am afraid that the skin of San Juan Evil Wolf has just broken. The rules have been stated, and the two sides agreed. Loya looked at the captains and foreign aides of both sides who were standing still, and said, then the first battle, let's start with the Cadre battle. Agree. I have no opinion. Guy and Titch finished their expressions, and Betsy and San Juan Bad Wolf slowly stood up. Be careful, the opponent's size advantage is too big, Guy said to Betsy in front of him when he was on the court. But at this time, Betsy turned a deaf ear and walked forward stiffly. Seeing this, Zhu Wei said beside him, I hope she can control it, after all. It's a bug. It stands to reason that devil fruit will emit a pheromone that is avoided by creatures other than human beings, let alone being eaten. I am afraid I will not bother to look at it. For this reason, devil fruit powers are basically human, and animals or other creatures are rare. But there are exceptions to everything. For example, Chopper accidentally ate the animal type, Renren fruit, and Renren form because of excessive hunger. This devil fruit gives Betsy a brain that is no different from a human, or even more developed, while retaining her instinct as a Zerg, hunting, foraging, and multiplying offspring. Whether this fruit made Betsy or Betsy made this devil fruit, who knows? Hiss. Suddenly, there was a roar in Betsy's throat, and a trace of blood appeared on the skin of her face. The bloodstain spread down, and soon spread all over her body. Puff! With the sound of something being broken, a layer of human skin exploded from her body, revealing Betsy's body. Or after using the fruit power. The whole body is covered with earth-brown carapace, with dots of Yuhi black Madara patterns on it, like eyes. Betsy's hands and feet still looked like human joints, but there was an extra bone spur machete at the elbow. That face stared at a pair of compound eyes, and its mouth was also a square opening that only insects have. Moreover, around Betsy's body, limbs as sharp as knives stretched out, like Senju Guanyin. Yes. Becky's body is a centipede. If nothing else, just standing there in her current state can greatly reduce her combat power. Because it's so disgusting. Of course, in the eyes of some people with special aesthetics, Becky exudes a coquettish and bloody beauty at the moment. Ah, bug. Captain, I hate bugs. Immediately, San Juan Evil Wolf cried out loudly. As a huge giant, San Juan Evil Wolf is not afraid of those giant sea kings or carnivores on land, but is most afraid of these incomparably small insects. Because of his size, he had no good way to deal with the bugs lying on him. If it's a normal bug, it's fine, just take a hot bath and it's gone, but sometimes, ancient insects like the poison mosquito dragon are deadly. That kind of highly poisonous creature, even if he has rough skin and thick flesh, he will sting and scream. But to him, the other party is not as big as the tip of a needle in an ordinary person's eye. Whenever this happens, San Juan Evil Wolf has no choice but to immerse himself in the sea, waiting for the bugs to drown. Over time, he can be said to be talking about bugs. Chapter 663 Illness comes from the mouth. Don't be afraid of her. You just have to step on it hard. Titch cheered for San Juan Bad Wolf and seemed very relieved. He is very aware of Betsy's abilities. Except for some trump cards that have not been exposed, under normal circumstances, Betsy's fighting method is to use insect swarms to devour the enemy, which is why she is called Insect Plague. However, with the size of San Juan Evil Wolf, if she wanted to use insects to bite him to death, Betsy would have to get a running water mat. As for her bladder-like arthropods, again, the attack range is too small. For ordinary-sized enemies, it is not a problem for the 1 meter-long limb to tear the enemy apart. But for San Juan Evil Wolf, this is where the benevolent sees the benevolent and the wise sees the wise. Guy thinks so too, clenching his fist slightly and looking at Titch. If Becky loses, they must win the next 2 battles. 3, 2, 1. Start. Following Loya's order, Betsy roared and quickly charged towards the San Juan Evil Wolf. Nasty bugs, don't come here. The obviously tall and mighty giant was like a little girl entangled by pervert, screaming and stepping down. Boom. A huge circular crater measured in kilometers immediately appeared on the round cake island. The soil rolled up like seawater, and rushed towards the surroundings. Under this attack range, Betsy is hard to escape. But at this time, at the top of the dirt wave, a figure was lying there, following the dirt wave toward the San Juan Evil Wolf. Nice Becky. Come on, Lady Betsy. The beast pirates suddenly cheered. Although they couldn't understand what happened, Betsy's unharmed appearance was obvious at a glance. In this regard, Loya also nodded slightly. Most insects have a natural reaction speed that is stronger than that of humans, and Betsy's talent in this area is even more terrifying as a fruit power user. Just as the other party landed on the ground, Betsy seemed to have expected it, and immediately flew into the air. Then the big feet of the San Juan Evil Wolf fell to the ground, and the layers of earth and waves rolled, just catching her in midair, like an antelope hanging its horns. Wonderful. Damn bugs, don't come here. This foot not only failed to kill the opponent, but instead allowed her to approach with her own attack. The San Juan Evil Wolf was obviously a little flustered. With a low IQ, he maintained a squatting posture and stretched out his hand to fish. This idiot. Titch was speechless for a while, and told him to trample to death and to lay down and use his hands. Isn't this an obvious opportunity for the other party? Everything alive has a vital point, and Betsy's goal is very clear, straight to the head of San Juan Bad Wolf. Sure enough, the action of the San Juan Evil Wolf just smashed the waves, and Betsy jumped up earlier as expected, and then spun in midair, landing firmly on the San Juan Evil Wolf's arm. Superior. The razor-like limbs behind him slammed into the muscles and climbed all the way up the arms of San Juan Bad Wolf. The target is the brain. Guy's eyes brightened, and he understood what Betsy was thinking. Just as Tiki guessed, he wants to rely on the insect swarm to consume San Juan Evil Wolf, running water mat. It's almost a month. But as a living creature, the opponent's most fatal weakness is very obvious. Moreover, it can also directly enter the other's body through some potholes. This position is naturally the head. The wolf of San Juan was so huge that it would take Betsy a long time to drill a hole in his stomach. And on the head, whether it's the ears or the nostrils, it saves Becky a lot of time. Everyone shuddered at the thought of a monster known as the insect plague, biting and destroying the head of San Juan Evil Wolf. Don't let her get into your head. Titch cried out anxiously. Damn. San Juan Evil Wolf also understands this. He is just not high IQ, and he is not a fool. You want to eat me? Then I'll eat you first. All of a sudden, the San Juan Evil Wolf's arm slammed hard, and the huge muscle group vibrated at the same time, and the enormous force generated directly sent Betsy flying into the air. The skin of the arm that could be easily pierced just now seemed to be covered with armament hockey at the moment, allowing Betsy to stab. She could only helplessly slip to the side. Looking at Betsy, who was struggling in midair, San Juan the Wolf leaned down angrily and took a deep breath. Whoa! The strong inhalation drives the surrounding air, forming a Uzumaki-like cyclone. Huge battleship, he needs a very large amount of food every time he eats, which means that every time he eats, it takes a lot of time. This is undoubtedly very painful for a foodie who is eager to fill his stomach. Over time, he developed the ability to inhale all the creatures on an island into his stomach. Spreading the dragon wings to block the airflow for Robin, Loya looked at Betsy's body that suddenly stopped struggling, and mourned for a second for the San Juan Evil Wolf. Insect plague, Betsy, in addition to being able to control insects, but also the guy who can give birth to insects. Perhaps being sucked into her stomach was her real purpose. Because she also knows that there is no chance at all to face it hard. I suck. Along with the airflow, a large piece of soil, sand, and Betsy was suddenly sucked into the stomach by the San Juan Evil Wolf. The upper and lower jaws were tightly closed, and the San Juan Evil Wolf jumped directly on the spot, shouting as he jumped. Digest, digest, digest you. It seems that he also knows what happens when Betsy stays in his stomach for a long time, and wants to use exercise to consume energy, thereby accelerating the secretion of gastric acid. This piece of sea has suffered disaster. The giant creatures such as giant battleships danced awkwardly in place, and the sky-shattering waves never stopped. Large groups of fish and sea beasts were stunned by the sea water, turning their stomachs and drifting with the current. PFF ha ha ha, too many guys, it looks like we won the first game. After waiting for a few minutes, seeing that the San Juan Evil Wolf was just sitting there gasping for breath without any adverse reaction, Titch suddenly laughed out loud. There are 2 more games, don't be too happy. Guy is naturally unwilling to be outdone. Titch's dark fruit can restrain all devil fruit abilities. If he faces Redfield, the ending may not be good. The vampire fruit did make Ryder younger, but it also gave him his greatest weakness. Moreover, Ryder himself is a strong physique, and the degree of development of this newly acquired devil fruit ability is not high. But unfortunately, his opponent is himself. Ha ha ha, what if I lose? Lord Ulysses is the last generation of the vampire fruit. Tiki knew his weight, and he did not exaggerate and said that he would win. In fact, he himself knew that the plan that he had hidden for 20 years was all for the purpose of obtaining the fruit of shock. Now that the plan has failed, he can no longer eat a powerful devil fruit. He really can't please Guy. Ulysses. It's a worthwhile trip to fight against the legendary Blood Count. Redfield's fighting spirit is strong, and his eyes are shining at Ulysses. What if it was once the strongest in the world? Who is he? Lonely Rider. Because he has full confidence in himself, he has created what he is now. Ulysses felt the sight, and was about to open his mouth to say something, when suddenly, the San Juan evil wolf suddenly rolled over while holding his stomach, wailing endlessly. What's the matter? Has Becky not been digested? Titch paled in shock, looking at his crew over there rolling in the sea. Facts have proved that the things left by the ancestors are often right. Misfortune comes out of the mouth. Illness comes from the mouth. Chapter 664 Blood and Blood. But, damn. The wolf of San Juan screamed in pain and rolled over while clutching his stomach. Suddenly, the expression in his eyes became condensed, and the fool's face became a little colder. I'm going to drown you. As he spoke, the San Juan evil wolf fell down, buried the lower half of his face in the sea, and opened his mouth to drink. In the battle just now, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, the seawater outside the battlefield was frozen by Loya in advance. Now, drinking a sip of seawater mixed with ice slag is simply chilling. But the San Juan evil wolf shuddered and continued to gulp down the cow drink. Tons of seawater rolled into white waves like an open dam, which he swallowed. No matter what it is, I am afraid that it will be soaked together by the sea at this moment. As a devil fruit power user, Betsy must have gotten colder now. However, before the San Juan evil wolf could breathe a sigh of relief, the colic in his stomach intensified again. Ah, it hurts. It hurts. Captain, save me. Apparently, Betsy wasn't soaked in the sea. Seeing this, Titch said loudly to Guy Duo, we lost this game. Let her stop. The huge size of the San Juan evil wolf is a very powerful aid. If you really want to count it, the rest of the prisoners of level 0.6 add up to less help to Titch than him, and they can be said to be the real core members. But Guy gave Titch a glance and said, Betsy is in his belly, what do you want me to do to stop her? Even if he could, many guys wouldn't do that. Life and death depend on God's will. Do you still have to be merciful in the battle between pirates? At this time, Loya nibbled at the apple cut by Robin and said, it's too late to stop him. He can still struggle, but his powerful vitality is at work. According to normal people, the huge battleship is dead. In Loya's perception of the enemy of living beings, the body of the San Juan evil wolf is filled with a dense and faint breath of life. It may look no different from the outside, but the inside is already like a dam that has been corroded and penetrated. It is all the support of his body's abundant vitality that the San Juan evil wolf can cry out in pain. But it can't last forever. A relatively large mass of life force energy was traveling through his spine, the Jinchuriki column, and now it has reached his seemingly non-existent neck, and the target is his funny big head. Puff. Suddenly, the San Juan evil wolf stopped, staring stiffly ahead. His eyeballs were like two exploding Yuhi persimmons, directly blasting out two holes. Rustling. Countless black insects like crabs and spiders crawled out of the two caves and sprinkled the surrounding waters. However, these bugs seemed to be afraid of water. They screeched rustling in the seawater of Yuhi the orangutan, and lost their breath and sank to the bottom of the sea after a few seconds. Only at this moment did Betsy walk out of her eyes under the terrified gaze of a group of people, carrying a ball of white flowers, and set foot on the head of the wolf of San Juan. Every time she took a step, a cluster of worm eggs was left in the egg-laying mouth of her abdomen. In just one breath, those worm eggs hatched immediately, and instinctively began to drill into the scalp of the San Juan evil wolf. Eat and multiply. This is the fruit ability given to her by the Queen of Blades fruit. As long as she has sufficient food support, Betsy can multiply the swarm without limit. She is alone, an army. While nibbling on a certain harmony object, Betsy returned to her normal appearance. Her clothes were already torn, but her undisturbed appearance did not make one's heart rippling. There was only a chill, which always lingered in everyone's mind. The white arm was still wrapped with bloodshots, and Betsy said while eating, "It takes a lot of work to get the insect swarm to adapt to the concentration of stomach acid. I didn't expect it to get used to it," and he drank the seawater again. "I was going to keep him alive, but I'm sorry, I don't have the time." Those worms that lost their lives after being immersed in seawater for a few seconds have adapted to the concentration of stomach acid under the control of Betsy, and the evolutionary direction has been biased, so that they cannot survive in the ocean with normal pH. This ability to adapt the evolution of bugs is the strongest power given to her by the Queen of Blades fruit. If Betsy really didn't want the life of the San Juan wolf, as she said, then the answer is obvious: not to die, not to die. Asshole. Tiki's heart is bleeding, that's one of his generals. It seems that every cadre who joins his pirate group will not end well. Lafayette was hacked to death by Ulysses in the Crown of the King, Van Oka and others were killed in the Top War, now the Wolf of San Juan has been eaten by Guy's subordinates again. Clear-beard pirates. No, it is even said that the other 4 emperors, even the Chihuahua, will not suffer a single casualty for many years. It's good for him here. It's only been a year since the establishment of the pirate group, and the cadres have died over and over again. Why can others last so long, but not myself? This is too bad luck. Unlike Titch's unwillingness, Guy burst into laughter and said, "Good job, Becky. We'll leave it to us next." He and Redfield, as long as they win the next game, the text of the road sign history is theirs. Although Loya's words are there, people must have dreams. Getting the historical text of the road sign is the start of his dream. Looking at the performance of the two sides, Loya made a hash. The second is the captain's battle or the foreign aid battle, you can discuss it yourself. Guy just wanted to step forward, but Redfield walked out one step ahead. "I can't take it any more, Guy more." "Nani?" Guy frowned and was about to get angry, but what he saw were Redfield's eyes full of evil spirits, and he couldn't help but feel a chill. "Never mind." In the distance, Ulysses saw this scene and finally put down the Yuhi-T in his hand. Swish. I saw 2 Yuhi-colored lines passing through the air, and 2 more figures appeared on the round cake island that was originally empty. The figure of 2 red Yuhi. Also wearing a wine Yuhi-colored suit and a wine Yuhi-colored hat. If you don't look at the hairstyle, you may be regarded as twins. Ulysses was holding a Yuhi-colored cane. His long wine-colored Yuhi-colored hair was neat and tidy, and a few strands of hair that belonged to the right side passed through his forehead and turned to the left, adding a bit of arrogance to him. Redfield was holding the special umbrella. Although there were 2 pale pink braids behind his ears, his temperament was even more sinister. The previous generation of vampire fruit ability users versus the current vampire fruit ability users, this kind of scene is unprecedented. Only the appearance of the undead can make this kind of thing a reality. The 2 sides stood in the center of the arena and did not speak, but 2 boundless curtains of blood gradually spread, and the weaker pirates were stained by the blood mist and shriveled at a speed visible to the naked eye. A mummified corpse. Titch and Guy duo immediately ordered the team to retreat for 1,000 meters before finally escaping the affected area. There is such power before the fight, the strength of both sides can be imagined. Among the people present, only the core backbone can see the appearance of the 2 people in the blood fog, and the rest of the people are only left in panic, looking at the island with the blood fog to the sky. When the momentum of both sides condensed to an ultimate, Loya waved his hand and chopped down. Start. Bang. Chapter 665 Lion Hair Demon equals Carp. As soon as the voice fell, a terrifying wave of blood rushed to the face, and the strong explosion and collision sound were connected together, densely and continuously. At this time, Guy Duo, Tiki and the others crossed the sea and used their own strength to block the blood wave, but Loya just waved lightly, and the terrifying blood wave oncoming disappeared abruptly. In the Sea of Knowledge, Ivy stammered, "I have tried to transform Death Knights before, but none of them can exert such power, and fights are mostly based on swordsmanship. It varies from person to person." Loya replied, "Ulysses, as a former vampire fruit power user, left a legend on the sea for more than 200 years, and his strength has almost reached the limit before this world. If he is the same level as the Death Knight transformed by ordinary people, it is a bit unreasonable. Well, that's right. Ivy nodded and agreed with Loya's statement, but she immediately sighed and added, but unfortunately, it's still too weak, and it won't help you and her in the fight. If he can take Redfield and regain the vampire fruit, he may be sure. Loya said with a smile, this is my purpose. Originally, when Loya came here this time, he simply aimed at the historical text of the two, stolen, road signs and directly forced the two sides to hand them over by force. But the appearance of Redfield and Ulysses' scorching eyes made Loya change his mind. Loya didn't have much confidence in the half-dragon body of cheap Mother Ivy, otherwise the first thing he did when he came back was to kill Mary Joa to solve the source. So, Loya decided to find some help. Even if they can only help and involve each other for a second in their battle, it is a huge opportunity for the battle. So, as his confidant subordinate, Ulysses' strength is naturally the stronger the better. On the desert island, the blood fog rolls and the sword dances. Umbrellas and walking sticks, these two weapons that are not considered weapons kept colliding, sputtering out the flames of orange yuhi. After several attempts, Ulysses found the problem. The opponent is a strong individual, and eating vampire fruit is just to restore youth. With the arrogance that can only be used by a living body, Ryder can beat him in a head-to-head fight, even if he is inferior to his undead body in terms of strength and speed. Both sides are powerful monsters, and most often use the weapons in their hands to fight, but based on this alone, no one can win the other. So what can really decide the outcome of the battle is the use of other forces by both sides. Bloodbath. While thinking about it, Ryder also discovered this. Ulysses had no advantage in his previous unfavorable physical skills. At this moment, he pushed forward with his backhand, and a huge bloodbath condensed and formed from the blood mist. Screamed at Ulysses. The blood fog wasn't something they created for fun and to look imposing, but a home field advantage they created for themselves. In the blood fog, whether it is Ryder or Ulysses, every move can exert greater power. Seeing the bloodbath rushing over, Ulysses pulled out a sneer at the corner of his mouth. You are still using the energy form to attack the opponent. Your understanding of the power of blood is really rough. If you don't have enough skills, then use strength to make up for it. Ryder was not moved by this sentence. He obtained the vampire fruit in just a few months. Of course, he couldn't discuss this issue with Ulysses, who had been immersed in this art for many years. After speaking, the surrounding blood mist suddenly gathered, and the bloodbath quickly expanded in a circle, from more than 1 meter wide to more than 3 meters wide, wrapped in the powerful force of destroying gold and breaking stones, and bit Ulysses. Bang! But at this time, a wall of Yuhi the gorilla appeared in midair, blocking the bite of the bloodbath. Unclean blood shield. After the blood shield, Ulysses wore a magic circle around his wrist. He was not as skilled in the use of magic as Loya, and needed to be controlled in this way. Slowly turning the magic circle, the next moment, a humming suddenly appeared in the air. Suddenly, a tidal wave Yuhi appeared on the torso of the dead Ulysses, and he punched forward with a straight punch, roaring, Impurity Impact Shield. Hum. The gorilla Yuhi's blood shield shook suddenly, and before Ryder could understand what happened, the blood shield moved instantly. The body of the bloodbath that had not dissipated was immediately smashed, and the large blood shield was like a sea king launching a surprise attack, plowing the ground open and slamming Ryder's face. PFFT. A mouthful of blood mixed with a kiva tooth spurted out, and Ryder was full of doubts and was blown away heavily. What is this? Can the power of blood still be used like this? But now is not the time for him to think. One move forced Ryder back. Ulysses relied on his speed advantage, and suddenly appeared behind Ryder. A pair of wings grew out of his back, shaped like bat wings, covering Yuhi, exuding ultimate, evil and blood. Endless blood Yuhi wrapped around the sharp blade, and a Yuhi-colored skeleton with an open mouth and a frightened but silent face was outlined at the handle. Ryder was knocked into the air, and Ulysses flew parallel to him. Then, with a lift of the wrist, Blood sword gore fiend. Roar. The lion-haired evil ghost appeared between the two, and a deep Yuhi light came from the void and slashed towards Ryder. Hit by this move, Ryder is not dead or disabled. Damn, get out of here. At the critical moment, a burst of Yuhi light suddenly erupted from Ryder's body, and a violent wave of rage came, and he even forced the sword light to stop in place. Taking advantage of this moment of stiffness, Ryder turned around in midair and kicked the air hard. Moon step. The next moment, the sword light broke through the air wave, and the lion-haired evil ghost continued to roar, rushing to the sky. However, at this moment, there was no Ryder in that direction, only half of the shards of the great horse, swaying and falling down. Ulysses stopped his body, put his cane and scabbard behind his back with his left hand, and put his long sword upright on his chest with his right hand. He raised his head slightly. Ulysses chuckled at Ryder, who stepped on the moon step. What? I am afraid. At that moment, Ryder could perfectly avoid his attack, but he stopped for a second when he saw the lion-haired evil spirit, so that he was beheaded. The lion-haired evil spirit is terrifying, there is no doubt about it, but it is not enough to deter a powerhouse of Ryder's level. Then it was the appearance of the lion-haired evil spirit, which brought out some bad memories of Ryder, making him absent for a moment. It was also Ulysses who didn't know this in advance, otherwise he would be able to expand the results of the battle and even decide the situation of the battle with just a moment's absence. But, not afraid. Huh. I said, it's not fear. Ryder raised the volume, and a surging blood flame suddenly erupted from his body, which was the external form of the excessively condensed blood power. In this state, after Ryder broke out just now, Yuhi's face quickly turned pale, and his body exuded a strong murderous intent. Scoff. Tear off the mask on his face, revealing a pair of demonic and evil eyes, Ryder said slowly, after I fought with Kong, I was arrested by Garp. That little guy who took advantage of the danger, at that time, looked exactly like your trick. So. It's not fear, it's anger. Ding. The two weapons were placed together, and bright sparks illuminated Ryder's eyes. I remember what I'm going to do. I'm going to be one piece. I'm going to kill Garp. You, get out of your way. Quote. Bang. Ulysses flew out in an instant, plowing a long dent in the ground. 666 Blood Explosion Demon Realm Blood Refining and Killing. Huh. On the sea in the distance, Loya snorted lightly, attracting Robin's attention. What happened? Did Ulysses lose? Impossible. As the strongest and most unparalleled cadre under Loya, Ulysses was the one who pushed the Blackbeard pirates back alone. The famous Robin of Redfield has also seen it in the records, but Ulysses has an innate advantage, is very familiar with the vampire fruit, and his melee combat ability is also unparalleled in the world. There is no reason to lose. No, it's still early. I just heard some good news. Loya's mouth was playful, and he touched his chin with a smirk. The appearance of the lion-haired evil spirit reminded Redfield of Garp, who locked him up. Suddenly, Loya had already figured out what Garp looked like before. If nothing else, that is what Garp looks like after he has reached his climax in the 6 forms, when his life is returned. It's no wonder that Garp's name among the pirates is Evil Ghost, and there is such a reason. Mysterious and mysterious. The guy who made the appetite is the most annoying. Robin rolled his eyes at him and pulled the peeled grapes back and threw them into his mouth. Loya was caught off guard and bit down, almost biting his tongue. Cap. One Piece. It looks like you haven't recognized the reality yet. In the pit, Ulysses stood up without changing his face. He was dead. As long as it wasn't a large-scale physical trauma, even smashing his head would be meaningless to him. A trace of blood wrapped around the broken rib in his chest, Ulysses held the long sword back, and sneered, "The world is not the world you know, you are already outdated, Redfield. It's not up to you, the old guy, to preach to me. Since you want to get in the way, let's fight." Ryder appeared in front of Ulysses, and a blade popped out from the front of the umbrella, stabbing him in the head. Ding! Bang! Holding the sword in the right hand to block the attack, the cane and scabbard in the left hand sent forward, knocking Ryder out heavily. Ulysses was arrogant, and disappeared in place in a flash, and continued to cut down with a sword. Crackling. The two fought dozens of times in an instant, and each time it was a head-on collision, with no intention of retreating. Ordinary people can't see their figures at all, only the sparks that are constantly sputtering, forming a fire dragon in the empty mid-air, proves how fierce this battle is. Go to hell. Suddenly, the two sides exchanged fists and leaned back at the same time. But Ryder bit Kobo, resisting the pain and pulling his body back, his empty left hand clenched into a claw, and he slammed into Ulysses' heart. PFFT. For a time, black blood surged. The body of a living person does not have the characteristics that the undead are not afraid of pain and death, but at a critical moment, they can also stimulate their potential and burst into greater power. This is a reality that Ulysses cannot change. However, I'll give it to you if you want, it's useless anyway. Ulysses only stood firm at this time, and sneered and sent the sword out. Blood sword blood python. Hiss. The blood snake rushed up fiercely. At close range, Ryder had no choice but to use armament hockey to protect himself. The blood python's poisonous Kobo gnawed on Ryder's shoulders, and only a shallow bite into a layer of epidermis could no longer penetrate. As the only man who defeated Steel, Sora, Redfield's domineering accomplishments are at their peak. Cut. Spitting on, Ryder quickly retreated and distanced himself from Ulysses. In his hand, he held a mass of rotten, withered heart. While panting slightly, Ryder mocked, "Didn't you say that energy transformation is a very crude way of using it? You are not the same." "No, this is not the same as your attack." Ulysses clenched his fists and snort, snort, snort. Unprepared, Ryder, the world's top physique expert, groaned and knelt on the ground. The strength of the human body could not resist the sharp blood thorns, and 3 blood thorns extended from his chest, dripping blood. Bowing his head in shock, Ryder couldn't believe it. How is that possible? The same is the power of blood, which is essentially a kind of vitality. Whether it is Ryder or Ulysses, they can easily detect the opponent's attack. But these 3 blood thorns came so suddenly that Ryder realized the attack at the moment when his chest started to hurt. "I said, you don't know anything about the power of blood." Ulysses sheathed his sword, as it would not be used for subsequent attacks. The power of blood is the power of life itself, with unlimited potential, and is the root of all miracles. Facing Ryder, Ulysses spoke eloquently. "You only use it as a tool to restore youth. Naturally I can't understand the real power of blood. What I just did was to plant seeds in your body, that's all." "Nani?" Ryder was startled and carefully felt the blood in his body. It was only then that he discovered that there was an extra power in his body that did not belong to him. That thing was mixed in the blood, and it had the same root and the same origin. If you didn't feel it carefully, you couldn't find it at all. "Get out of here." Ryder raised Yuhi's face, trying to force him out. But the power was rooted in him, drifting with the flow, and Ryder did nothing but burst his own capillaries. "Give it up, the power of magic is something you can't understand." Ulysses sneered and turned the magic circle at his wrist again. Blood explosion demon realm blood refining and killing. Boom, crash. Accompanied by dense explosions, sharp blood thorns pierced out of Ryder's body, and some of them condensed from the outside blood mist and penetrated his body. Thousands of blood thorns bloom on Ryder's body, enchanting and beautiful, but full of murderous intent. Wow! Being hit so hard, even Ryder couldn't bear it. He opened his mouth wide, spat out a large pool of blood, and fell directly to the ground. Looking at the fallen Ryder, Ulysses sighed with emotion. Being defeated in this way, and defeating other people in this way, cause and effect cycle, isn't that the case? On the sea, before the blood mist completely dissipated, Loya announced with a smile, "Second round, the Blackbeard Pirates win." Impossible. Guy's eyes widened for a moment. That monster Baroric Redfield failed. He was more or less aware of the movement on the island, but because of that, Guy was the most shocked. Because the guy who even he had to be careful with, Lonely Rider, really lost his movement after screaming. PFF ha ha ha, heaven will not kill me. Titch laughed loudly. Now 1-to-1, as long as I beat you, the text of the history of the road sign belongs to me. Humph, prepare to die. At this moment, Ulysses, whose hair was a little disheveled, flew over from the sky holding a UV-colored humanoid object. That humanoid object was nothing else, it was Ryder, who was seriously injured and dying. Looking at Loya, Ulysses said, Lord Loya, I want to go back first. Well, I see. Loya smiled and said, be careful not to let him die. Chapter 667 Guido vs Titch. Redfield was seriously injured and was dying. Ulysses breathed a sigh of relief from the power of his own blood. If he died halfway, the ghost knew where the vampire fruit would appear next time in the sea. So after getting a nod from Loya, Ulysses burst into full speed, jumped on a dragon boat, and ordered to set sail at full speed. Watching him walk away, Loya glanced at the circle of blood-drenched round cake islands, and said, it seems that this place cannot be used as a venue for a decisive battle for the time being. If you don't want to die, just retreat a little bit, and I'll make it up. Quote. The biggest goal has been achieved, but the gambling fight must continue. The rest of the people looked at each other, and then panicked and ordered to retreat. Long live Ice Dragon, Loya is about to start. Run. After watching that shocking battle, no one dared to question Loya's power. Hearing these words at this moment, the group of ordinary pirates only hated that their sailboats did not have the mobility of naval warships. After they ran for half an hour, Loya's wings fluttered and fell into the blood mist. Those blood powers followed their own instincts and wanted to drain the life force in his body. But Loyana's huge magical power oscillated slightly, and the invisible fluctuations emanated, and a wide blank area was immediately cleared. A group of blue flames was held in the palm of his hand, reflecting Roja's face deeply. That is another form formed by Ultimate, ice power condensed together. It was also the deeper freeze of the Master after he returned from the breakthrough. Snapped. Suddenly clenching his fists, a circle of ice blue magic circles suddenly appeared under Loya's feet. The magic circle was only 10 centimeters in size at first, but it spread out in an instant, and in the blink of an eye, it enveloped this sea area and wrapped the archipelago inside. Dragon Slayer Profound Truth, the land of the end. Swish. The blood mist in the air stopped fluttering for a moment, and even the wind that was flowing everywhere was imprisoned in front of this freezing. Afterwards, the terrifying cold air rose into the sky, and the earth was pure white. In the distance, Guy Duo, Titch and the others looked at the sky in dismay, looking at the cloud whose color was obviously different from other places, and they were speechless. Click. Only a light sound was heard, and in the eyes of everyone, the sky cracked. The frozen cloud layer collapsed under the action of gravity, and it was like a collapse of the sky, hitting the ground. Standing on the sea in the distance and looking around, the cloud that stretched for an unknown number of kilometers, a truncation layer appeared. The huge ice cubes fell down, and the sound was like muffled thunder. It is the biggest avalanche on the Yuhi soil continent. I am afraid it is far less powerful than the current moment. The iceberg-like cloud layer smashed into the sea, and the waves that were raised were hundreds of meters high. The seabed silt was expelled almost instantly, exposing the bottom rock below, and the ice cubes took root in it. When the movement subsided, the sound of neat inhalation echoed between the sailboats. Because of the prestige of Tianbang just now, a huge snow-capped mountain with a radius of hundreds of kilometers was formed on this pie-shaped island group. Destroy. Do not. This is to change the terrain with the power of one person. It belongs to the supreme power like moving mountains and reclaiming seas. In a trance, a figure came to them. Loya floated there quietly, fanning the dragon wings behind him. The third fight, Guido versus Titch, can begin. Standing on the iceberg, the head-on blowing as the biting cold wind. If it weren't for the down-to-earth, Titch really couldn't believe that 10 minutes ago, this place was still a summer island. However, such an unreasonable scene appeared in front of him so vividly that he held up a pile of snow and could clearly feel the body temperature that was taken away when the ice slag melted. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. Titch sighed so deeply that even his ambitions were as high as his, and he couldn't raise his head in front of this mighty force. This feeling was something that Whitebeard had never brought him back then. This has exceeded the limit of his cognition. Except for miracles, there are no words to describe it. Fear, but also with a little happiness. At this moment, Titch just wants to beat Guy more honestly, and then go back to recuperate. A few more times, I'm afraid his dreams will collapse in front of Loya's power, just like the clouds in the sky. On the other side of the snowy mountain, Guy touched his chest more and fell into deep thought. It's true that he fused the heart of stone and gained more power than before, but so what? With this person standing in front of you, one piece. Can you really touch it? Two preoccupied captains walk in the snow Yamanaka, and then meet by chance in a canyon. Dark cave. At the first meeting, Tiki made the first move and swayed the black water that was as black as ink. Large pieces of ice were swallowed and crushed by the black hole-like void, forcing Guy to step back quickly. Under the dark cave, the gravitational force of the dark fruit was exerted by Titch to the ultimate. Even if Guy with a tyrannical physique was pulled in more, he would have to peel off his skin. Seeing Guy constantly dodging, Tiki's face was full of smiles. Many guys. Keep hiding. Let's see whose stamina runs out first. Every time Guy avoids the dark acupuncture point, he has to resist the strong gravitational pull with his physical body, which consumes a lot of physical energy. Although it is not easy for Tick to release this move, but compared to Guy, this consumption is nothing. Guy is extremely strong in one-on-one duels and has plenty of stamina. Tiki's stamina is not as good as him, but he consumes less. Now the competition is who can't hold on first. But Titch forgot that in order to let the dark cave catch up with Guy, his attention was on Guy and the black water curtain at the same time. For a moment in between, Guy didn't appear in Titch's sight. Then, bang! Tiki was covered in blood, and flew out in extreme shock. It's so fast. What speed is this? At that moment, Titch had the illusion of facing Ulysses, but Guy burst out faster, even faster than Ulysses. The air could not hinder him in the slightest, time seemed to not exist in front of him. Directly crossing time and space, Guy appeared behind him more. Thick smoke billowed from his body, covering his body. A pair of eyes twinkling he stared at Titch. Guy raised his fist slowly. Empty fist. Damn it. Dark cave. Boom, boom. The transparent airwaves and the dark curtain collided, and the two sides formed a strange balance. At the top of the iceberg, the towering mountain burst violently, and was heavily flung to the front of Loya and the others. Even if they had seen the terrifying Tianwei of Loya turning his hands into clouds and covering his hands into rain, the rest of the people were amazed at the fighting power of Guido and Tiki. In particular, Chote, with extremely shrewd eyes, doesn't look a little drunk. This is why he is willing to be a captain under Titch's banner, instead of leaving directly to create a pirate group. He is not the top monsters like Bundy Ward and Baroric Redfield. He can ignore Titch's invitation at will. No one dares to shoot at them, swaggering away from pushing City, and making Tiki afraid stop. To be honest, he was similar to the supernovas of this era in the last era, but the one who really stood at the top was the white-bearded character like Luffy. Look, the iceberg is split. Just then, a commotion caught Chote's attention. He looked up and clicked his tongue slightly. Did you tear apart such a big iceberg? Is the winner already decided? Chapter 668 Volcano Assassination. Looking at the iceberg in the distance, Robin suddenly asked, "Where is Tiki? He can fight with Guy so much." Robin is also clear about Titch's low-key 20 years on the Whitebeard ship, but ambition is just ambition, the most relaxed empty talk. Whether you can stand firm or not depends on your own strength. In fact, most of the traders of the pirate ship have no good end, especially the guy who dare not face or ban the original captain, and only dare to go out independently to establish a pirate group. Because this means that their strength is far less than that of the previous captain, and they need time to recuperate. However, Tiki is different. He is right, but in just 1 year, he has grown from that state to the point where he can challenge Guy head-on. This speed of practice, Robin has only seen it in Loya. For this question, Loya shrugged. The D family, isn't it normal to be a little special? D. Robin looked at Loya thoughtfully and smiled sweetly. By the way, Loya, do you know the secret of the D family? In the sea of knowledge, Loya urgently asked for help. What should I do? As soon as the words came out, Loya knew that he was going to be. Ivy told Loya all the history she knew, including the 100-year gap, including the secrets of the D family. But just as Loya felt before, the more he knew, the more speechless he became. The truth is actually very cruel, so cruel that Robin might not be able to accept it. Whether to tell her or not, Loya has been struggling. What you have to do is to lay out the present, the problems left over by history, or wait until you fully control the world. Well, that's right. This sentence wakes up Loya. Everything he does is for the future. As for the hidden history of the past, who care? Those he didn't care about. So he was silent for 2 seconds and looked into Robin's eyes. Trust me, now is not the time. Robin. Oh, yes. Staring closely at Loya, Robin pulled a slight arc at the corner of his mouth and turned his head. Just when Loya thought it was over, Robin suddenly added. You know a little too much, doesn't it? Ah, so, ha ha. Loya scratched the back of his head embarrassedly, pretending to be crazy. However, Robin did not continue to investigate. She had already discovered the problem. Since Loya doesn't say it, then believe him. If you really want to talk about it, the root of everything is in Loyana's foggy life experience. Knowing the sea, Ivy sighed. My daughter-in-law here is really smart. After a pause, Ivy had an expression of hating iron and steel. No, I think you are still too stupid. I don't know if you are behind her back. She will see everything in her eyes. If you put it on me, I will also doubtful. It's tough, Mom. Roha rolled his eyes and spit out, and then changed the subject. What's going on with Guy Duo, can you see it? It's just a talent born from the curse of flesh and blood. It is estimated that it is the descendant of the servant I brought here before. Brought it here. Loya looked stunned, and then sighed heavily. So, the more he knows, the more painful he will be. The curse of flesh and blood is a curse cast by the ancient gods who were sealed in the prison of the Titans on the creation of the Titans. It can make rock and metal creations gradually turn into flesh and blood, from creations that only know how to act according to procedures, to mortals with free will. In the world of Azeroth, it is precisely because of the curse of flesh and blood that various races and magnificent history were born. However, this process ended many years before players came to Azeroth. The human ancestors broke away from the Vrykul, rose in the wild, and established the Seven Kingdoms. But in addition, there are more Titan creations that have not been completely affected by the curse of flesh and blood. Guys such as mountain giants still follow the procedures left by the Titans. The reason for saying so much is that the servant Ivy brought over is a guy who has not fully taken effect from the curse of flesh and blood, and is in a state of half rock and half flesh. This unfinished curse of flesh and blood gave him a talent, and it was also the reason why Ivy was able to take a fancy to him and make him a servant. That talent is the power that Guy has displayed more now. There is no specific scientific name, but Ivy gave this talent a name according to its characteristics. Volcano assassination. God his meow volcano assassination. The earth-shattering movement of the volcanic eruption is used to assassinate. Happy ending. But the fact is that scrambled eggs like this, that Guy really used this talent to assassinate. Just like Guy, as long as your attention is not on him, then he can use the gift from Titan. The ability and the potential to stimulate his own flesh and blood are like a volcano erupting. Thunder and thunder come behind the enemy, and the body is burning with billowing flames, so that he can tear the enemy to pieces like an erupting volcano and scorch it. Well, as for why Guy has black smoke all over him. That's of course because his talent wasn't fully developed, as evidenced by the sulfurous smell. The camera went back to the iceberg. In the confrontation just now, Guy obviously had the upper hand. Titch's dark acupuncture point changed from a spherical shape to a semicircle, and then was pressed back little by little. At this moment, the iceberg under the feet of the two sides could not bear the huge force and was torn apart bit by bit. Titch was able to breathe, escaped into the darkness and appeared on the distant mountain. And there are many guys, who are moving their hands and feet, ready to go. This distance is still within the range of his talent. As long as Tiki dares to blink, he can appear behind the opponent. What a monster! The wound has healed. While absorbing the injury with the dark fruit, Tiki didn't bother to wipe the sweat from his forehead, and stared at Guy Duo without blinking. In the previous confrontation, he was slightly inferior, but when it comes to the damage, it is undoubtedly that Guy is more serious. However, in just a few breaths, the bruises and wounds on Guy's body had healed. The steel-like muscles are extremely smooth, and there is no sign of injury. How to fight this? Guy's reputation for being invincible one-on-one is really not blown out. Stamina, defense and recovery and attack power are the best in the world. No wonder the Navy caught Guy so many times and couldn't kill him. Even the 7-stage power-charged skylight kick that Kizaru had used on Loya before would only leave a scar like a wound to Loya, and it would take a few minutes. Fully healed. If I admit defeat here, my life can be saved, but the historical text of the road sign is gone. What should I do? Teach was in a hurry, frowning and thinking about countermeasures. However, he overlooked one point again. It wasn't that looking at Guy a lot could restrain his mobility, but that the attention had to be on him. When he started thinking about the situation, Guy Duo immediately appeared behind him. Boom, boom. Thick smoke billowed from his body, and along with the sound of gas explosions, red Yuhi sparks sputtered out from Guy Duo's body. Raising his fist with a sneer, Guy slammed a heavy punch at Titch. Die. Chapter 669 Titch admits defeat. Crap, I'm careless. When the crisis came, the fist style was like a solid hammer, squeezing Titch's body. Attacks launched at this distance, even if the dark fruit's ability is buggy, there is absolutely no time to use it. Now Tiki regrets it very much. If he didn't envy Loya's ice dragon fruit at the beginning, he still insisted on the goal of the first half of his life and chose the shock fruit, the current situation would definitely not be so passive. But there is no regret medicine in the world, he chose Loya, everything is doomed. Bang! Under everyone's attention, the entire mountaintop exploded suddenly with a loud noise, and the large chunks of ice were not pulled down by gravity, but were shattered and blown away by a terrifying punch. At the same time, a figure flew out and drew an arc in the sky. The darkness wrapped around his body as quickly absorbing the injury, splicing the broken bones back together. Titch still has the strength to fight, but he knows that at this stage, he is just delaying the time of death. So Titch made a decision. He can't die. If you die, you will be 100. What a shit dream. What bullshit One Piece. There is only hope if you live. Turning around in the air, Titch shouted loudly while vomiting blood, Lord Loya. I admit defeat, I admit defeat. The voice echoed in the sea, and the audience was dumbfounded. Choate glanced at Titch, then looked at the also dark-faced, Moon Kiba Hunter, Carter Rinna Dipin, hiccups. This world is really the same every day what? On the back of the ice wolf, Loya also lost his mind for a moment when he heard this sentence, but he immediately reacted, and he thought about it. Titch is smart and ambitious. He deeply understands that only by living can there be hope, and only by living can there be dreams. He is not the Lord of Destiny like Roger, nor is he a hero like Whitebeard, he is just an ambitious pirate. That's all. Robin couldn't believe it, and muttered to himself. He actually conceded. Why? A slightly famous big pirate would rather die than surrender in a formal duel. And Tick, as the four emperors of the New World, actually admit defeat so decisively. Isn't he afraid of his subordinates rebelling? Doesn't he still want to be the pirate king? In this way, the whole world will laugh at him as a laughingstock. Robin looked at Loya, waiting for his answer. Then, Loya said, "The third game, the Beast Pirates, victory." Whoa! The pirates of the 100 Beast Pirates cheered and shouted Guy's name loudly. The battle didn't last long, and the battle ended with almost 3 punches and 2 kicks. After today, Guy's prestige will enter a new stage, because he is the only one who has defeated the existence of the other 4 emperors under the witness of everyone. At this moment, as a foil for the Blackbeard pirates, all the pirates looked like water, looking at Titch with shame and hatred. Pirates often have more face than the navy. The more famous the pirate group, the more they value their faces. Chait, Carter Rinadipin stuck his waist, looked at Titch the dumpling chicken, who climbed onto the deck, and said to Bucks Choate, "The barrel, what are you going to do next?" Grumpy. Choate dragged the jug and gulps down the jug until he was out of breath before putting it down. After burping, Jot said thoughtfully, "You better invite Pizarro. I don't have any dreams, as long as I have wine." Really, I remember that sentence. Dai Peng wasn't angry either. In fact, if it wasn't for the last bit of obsession, she would have made the same choice as Choate. Without even looking at Titch who was approaching, Dai Peng turned and left. With his subordinates. Titch, who came over, flashed a fierce light in his eyes and asked, "Where is she going?" "I don't know, maybe I went shopping for clothes," hiccup. When Loya spoke, Guy could only spit in regret, and then return to the pirate ship. If he was given another second to charge up just now, or Tiki held on for a few more seconds, he would tell Tiki with practical actions why War was like Yuhi. At this moment, Guy saw the figure of Dai Peng leading his subordinates to leave, and nodded with satisfaction. Even if he didn't kill him, Titch couldn't get up this time. No one's going to follow a softball captain. Especially in this dangerous new world. Today he can surrender more to Guy to save his life, but what about tomorrow? Dai Peng's departure is a signal and a judgment. Of course, in addition to this, there is a sentencing waiting for Titch. According to the rules of gambling, Titch, hand over the historical text of the road signs to Guy. Feeling Guy's scorching eyes, Loya was expressionless and slowly read out the results. Even if Titch is not reconciled and is not ready to go all out, he has no intention of disobeying Loya. What's more, this is the case where he has foreign aid Ulysses, and he lost in a fair game. Sighing silently, Titch reached out and pulled out a black screen. Seeing this, Guy suddenly realized. No wonder the Legion of the Undead couldn't find the historical text of the road sign before, which was different from the pirate group that did not set up a base camp and wandered around in the realm. Tiki's territory is the former territory of Whitebeard, and the more important positions were established before Whitebeard. If this thing is hidden on a certain island, with the means of the undead army, how can you find a trace? But the fact is that it is not. Guy is also wondering where Titch hides it. Now it seems that after taking another piece of the historical text of the road sign, Titch didn't take it out at all. Only in the dark curtain of the dark fruit can the undead return without success. Only the creations with unknown materials, such as the historical text, can be preserved in the dark curtain for a long time. Just as Guy was thinking about it, as expected, a touch of Yuhi-Yan appeared in the middle of the dark curtain, and the size and shape were exactly the same as the historical text of the road sign in his hand. Tiki looked at the stone that was connected to Yuhi, sighed again, and pulled it out. Ah. The volume became louder and louder each time, and as the red stone was completely pulled out, the sound appeared in front of Titch from far to near. At this moment, including Loya, they are all stunned. Sigma, hollow square. Looking at the surrounding scene, Ace's expression was, opening parenthesis D is defined as D. Then Loya's expression is, hollow up pointing triangle. These guys are really not honest at all. In a certain underwater ruin, Marco, who had just taken off his airtight diving suit, had his eyes stiff from left to right, looking at the secret room that was suddenly empty, and whispered, "Ace. What's wrong?" Vista got up from the sea and asked strangely. But then he also discovered the problem, because Ace, who had swam in one step ahead of them, had disappeared. Hold the grass. Where's the man? Chapter 670 Extinction Count. Ace also wants to know what's going on. They finally found out a little bit of news. Although there was no evidence that it was related to the historical text, they still dived to investigate because of the sixth sense of the Avengers. As a fruit person, Ace, even if he was a child, climbed trees and caught fish, but now his water quality is extremely poor. The result is that Ace, who has the worst water quality, was washed by the undercurrent of the seabed and rolled directly into the previous room. Then they found their long-sought target, the text of the road sign history. There is a sense that Zorro lost his way to find Ralph Drew and became the Pirate King. However, before Ace was happy for a few seconds, he just put his hand on the historical text of the road sign, and a pulling force dragged him together and fell into the dark curtain. Then, he appeared here and saw his enemy, Blackbeard, Marshall D. Teach, etc. Titch. Tiki. He propped himself up from the ground with a swipe, and Ace's clothes were burning with raging flames. Come on. Call. A line of fire under his feet quickly formed a circle, and the lines of flames circled Ace as if they were alive. Raising his fingers up to the sky, those fire patterns suddenly shrank and condensed on Ace's fingers. The scorching heat wave hit the face, and even Choate couldn't help but take a few steps back. Those ordinary pirates were even more unbearable. Some people's eyes were dry, and they were scalded to death by the heat wave before they could cry out in pain. Yan Emperor Great Flame Ring. The flames expanded rapidly, and in just one breath, a dazzling orange-yellow fireball appeared above the head of the Blackbeard pirates. Having experienced the transformation of life and death, Ace has taken a step forward in the development of burning fruit. Now that he and Blackbeard are fighting against each other, it is hard to say who will win. Titch went from dazed to shocked, from shock to mockery, and the expression on his face changed again and again, and then settled in calm. He knew that even if Ace had a deep hatred with him, that guy wouldn't allow him to mess around here. Because the new world has only one emperor. Swish. Sure enough, just as he was about to throw out his attack, suddenly, a freezing sound of crackling sounded. Ace, who was clearly not afraid of the cold, suddenly shuddered and looked up in confusion. I saw that the fireball that was still burning just now turned into an ice ball, and his fingers were just under the ice ball. Good wait. Ace thought. Bang. Waving his hands rather tired, Loya covered his forehead and said to Simon, "Send a few people to drag him back." Simon's mouth twitched, and he glanced at Ace, whose hands and feet were still above the ground, and nodded speechlessly. To tell the truth, this fool is almost a bad thing. So the rescuers acted very rudely, dragging one leg and pulling Ace out of the ice hockey abruptly. The crisp sound of his jaw hitting the ground made his back chill. Wearing a sea stone handcuff on the unconscious Ace, Loya coughed twice and said, "Many guys, your spoils have arrived." The little episode just now, Guy saw it all in his eyes, and the joy of victory suddenly calmed down. "Are you really going to give it to me? We stole it from Turtle Island." This question is not only asked by Guy, but Titch is also worried. This incident is a thorn buried between them and Loya, which cannot be removed or avoided. No matter how generous Loya is, allowing them to live is already the limit. How can they continue to hold the red stone? 3 words, 1 piece. Does he really care that much? This is your trophy. The rules are the rules, you can take it. But, hearing the first half of the sentence, Guy felt more relieved. It is good to have principles, and those who follow the rules are good people. However, Loya's but made Guy more recollected. But what? But, you stole it, didn't you? Loya said with a smile on his lips. Would you like to bet with me again? If you win, you can really own it. This proposal is full of temptation and temptation. Guy would like to ask, what to bet this time. But when he saw the chill in Loya's eyes, the stone heart immediately calmed him down. Rule. What are the rules? In this world, the strong are the rules. It is his own rules that Loya abides by, but this rule is himself. As long as Loya is unwilling, can he rely on righteousness to force Loya to step back? In this chaotic world, besides the rulers, who cares about the hearts and minds of the people? Even if he continues to win Loya in the gambling battle, what awaits him is definitely a more miserable end than Tick. Loya was not prepared to return the historical text of the road sign to him at all. The purpose of his visit this time was this. Thinking of this, Guy didn't pay much attention to the wink that Zue kept giving him, and decisively refused. That's fine. But since it's already mine, do I have the right to deal with it? Before I get it back, yes. Loya smiled faintly and nodded. That's good. In that case, I am willing to give it to Lord Roya. Please let me live. Loya already has the intention to kill. Only an ambitious and conceited idiot like Tiki will have a fluke, believing that the new world needs them to maintain stability, and Loya will not kill. This world is the same without anyone, and the same is true of the 4 emperors. Therefore, Guy should be soft-hearted and give up this trophy. Hearing this sentence, Titch in the distance couldn't believe it at first, and then there was a penetrating coolness. Why did Guy do this? He had already guessed. At the same time, he is also fortunate. Fortunately, he lost this time. If he wins, the end will be worse than now. In the knowledge of the sea, Loya said to Ivy, if you change your heart, can you really change your IQ? The strength and wisdom of several generations are integrated in it, as long as it can withstand the backlash. What do you think? Outside, Guy stayed still, waiting for Loya's reply. Zhu Wei was very unwilling, but he could only sigh uncontrollably. After a long time, Loya chuckled softly. Very well, I agree. In this regard, Guy breathed a sigh of relief, did not speak, turned around and left with his subordinates. But at this moment, Loya suddenly said, don't rush to leave, I'll show you a unique trick. Huh? Tiki and Guy looked at Loya blankly, not understanding what he meant. Unique. Are you going to freeze something? This is the new world, are you ready to transform into the Arctic? Looking at them, Luoya stood up from the back of the ice wolf, landed next to the red stone, and said word by word, the historical text, it is said that it is indestructible, and its hardness is not comparable to that of Halu stone, and it is also that they can be hundreds of thousands. The reason it has been passed down for thousands of years. So, I just got a little new power, I want to try it, is it really as indestructible as the legend? Etc. Could it be that? Suddenly, Tiki and Guy stood up excitedly, biting Kiba. This is the real extermination plan. Chapter 671 End Day. 3 more. Please subscribe. Find the big secret treasure and become the Pirate King. This is the dream of countless pirates, and it is the keynote of this era. What boy doesn't aspire to success? Which jellyfish doesn't want to be the Pirate King? And if you want to become the Pirate King, you must find the big secret treasure and board the final island. Ralph drew. The existence value of the red stone is to indicate the location of this final island to the world, so it is called the historical text of the road sign. But at this moment, what did they hear? Guy had dry lips and said to himself, impossible. A lot of people have tried it, and this thing can't be broken at all. This is not a habitual thinking, but a fact. Historically, many people have obtained the red stone, and many people have tried to destroy it before being snatched away. But without exception, they all failed. The hardness of the red stone is unmatched by the seafloor stone, and it can even be immune to the power of the devil fruit. The best record, so far, is the world's #1 swordsman several decades ago, who left a 20 centimeters long dent on a certain piece of historical text. That's because they are too weak. Loya said with a sneer, nothing is eternal. Since it exists in the world, it can be destroyed. Whitebeard thinks he has changed the terrain to keep hope alive. Naive. Looking at Guy Duo and Tiki in a daze, Loya raised his fist. I heard that you want to be the pirate king. Then find it for me. Shock. Click. A force that is very familiar to the world emerged out of thin air. The space around Loya suddenly shattered, and the endless gravitational force of the void pulled everything in reality and swallowed it. Shake the fruit. Why? Titch's eyes widened, saliva splashing between roars. Foolishness, just like you think that the red stone cannot be destroyed. Luoya was not interested in explaining, because it was not enough. Boom. Invisible energy soared into the sky, breaking a hole in the sky. Conqueror's haki is mixed with the supreme dragon power that subdues all things, and it overturns Tiki to the ground in an instant. Not enough. The calm magic is surging, and a touch of blue appears on Loya's fist. Even if it is just a breath, the sea condenses into ice. Under the triple strength increase, Loya had to maintain his dragon form to control them with his tough dragon body. But this is not the end. Gollum. Crash. Muscles and bones began to tremble with the vibration, and with the help of the shaking fruit, Loya's control over his body improved to a higher level. When the blood was tumbling, the blue and black unique domineering fists were put on a fist, and on top of it, another power followed closely behind. Armament haki, 6 types of profound truth, 6 king's guns. Pirates all over the world, listen to me. Your ambitions, your One Piece. Not a very loud voice echoed in everyone's ears. Turtle Island, Malinford, Mary Joa, Chambord, Alabasta, Upside Down Mountain, East China Sea, South China Sea, West China Sea, North Sea, every corner of the world, everyone, at the same time, heard Loya's reading. Your dreams, your everything. It will be here, total end. Ice Dragon Slayer magic, final profound truth, Dragon Slayer. Roar. Somewhere, something was roaring. Even though they are thousands of miles apart, there is a picture in the eyes of the world. A boundless giant dragon hovered in the sky, roaring and roaring, the mountains collapsed, and the rivers and seas stopped flowing. Lava and ashes covered the earth, and the sky was filled with lead. Dragon means breaking and defeating, dragon, and the meaning of dragon, an inheritance means breaking the inheritance and severing the dragon's veins. In this world, no one is more aware of the horror of the inheritance of will than Loya from the land of China. So what he has to do is to completely cut off the inheritance of One Piece before the final decisive battle. Let the pirates of this world sink forever. Then. The sky is falling. Boom. The purple thunder devoured all the light and sound, and the brilliance of the sky descended to the earth. And its target is the red stone. Loya next to it. Phantasmal Nightmare has no consciousness, but has instincts. Just because it exceeded the world's tolerance limit, Luoya and Junjun Fruit were expelled, not to mention that what he wanted to do at the moment was to completely subvert. Illusions have their own meaning of existence. One Piece's fantasy world, its meaning of existence, is a dream. Loya wants to destroy the red stone, he has the ability to destroy the red stone. This has touched the bottom line of the illusion, and it is the root cause of the great loss of foundation after the promotion and the destruction of it. However, Loya was not panicked by this, his eyes were very firm. The power you show is what we bring to you. Now, get out of your way. Bang. Under the gaze of countless people, in that picture, Loya's fist landed on a big Yuhi-colored stone. Time stands still at this moment, and the picture stops at this moment. I don't know how long it took, a crack appeared on the red stone. Click. The crisp sound echoed in everyone's ears, and in addition to panic, they felt that they had lost something. That was their dream, shattered. On March 15, 1521 in the Sea Garden calendar, after the disaster day, Loya once again brought a new anniversary to the world. It's called End Day. Not only was there only 4 pieces, but none of the historical text of the road sign was missing, but it also shattered the dreams of countless pirates. The road to new life opened by Whitebeard with his life looks so weak in the face of Loya's desperate plan. When hope turns into despair, At this moment, the world is silent. But at the same time, countless people began to search for whether there is a God in this world. Because the purple thunder that can be seen even on the back of the planet, obviously wanted to stop Loya. But it failed, and the red stone was still broken. At this moment, perhaps there are pirates who have not given up their dreams. Love true exists in the world, then someone can find it, and this fact cannot be denied without the historical text of the road sign. However, such people are a minority after all, a minority among a minority. More pirates, in addition to abandoning themselves, burning, killing, kidnapping, and then being wiped out by the undead army and the navy, are left in a daze. The road ahead is cut off, and what remains at this moment is only despair, and the icy coldness that penetrates the heart. On Turtle Island, there is another piece of road sign history text in Loya's room, where Ulysses is checking. Besides them, there were only Simon and Robin in the room. This red stone was sent to Turtle Island after Guy Duo left. His heart has died once, and now he dies again, and he no longer has the passion of the year. In his words, he was tired. From being filled with hatred, to stealing by design, Guy has gone the extra mile. The final result is that Loya is invincible in the world, and his dreams return to nothingness. Compared to becoming the Pirate King, Guy now wants to be his own rich man. After careful inspection, Ulysses frowned and put down the tool, and reported to Loya with twitching corners of his mouth, "Lord Loya, I'm sure, this is really our forged red stone." But when the previous piece was destroyed, how should the thunderbolt be explained? Robin couldn't figure this out. She was smart and felt that her brain was not enough recently. She just destroyed a stone, and even touched the world consciousness. And let's not talk about it, what was destroyed was a fake. It's fake. If the world consciousness really exists, will he not recognize it as a fake? For this question, Robin has been nervous recently, and he has read through a huge amount of information, but can't find an answer. However, Loya was different. When Ulysses told him that it was really a fake red stone, he already had an answer in his heart. Chapter 672 Heavenly Path Management Ivy. It doesn't really matter whether the red stone is true or not. When it represents the dream of becoming the Pirate King, then it is true. World consciousness, or fantasy nightmare, what it wants to prevent is not Loya's destruction. Drop this fake, but stop Loya from destroying this dream. But unfortunately, it failed. It is true that no matter how strong Roja's power is, it is only the power of an individual, and it has not yet reached the stage of world consciousness. If the purple-black divine thunder that condenses all the destructive aura is really shot down, he will not be the same. 9 deaths. No, that is called death together, 10 deaths without life. However, as the guardian of the dream world, the original owner and chief mother of the Loya dragon body, Ms. Christopher Ivy, came into contact with the power of that level. At that critical juncture, it was she who asked Loya to let go. It was also her who resisted the momentary effort of the divine thunder with the golden runes on her forehead and the massive merits of helping the world advance. This is the power given to her by the fantasy world, accepting the limitations of the fantasy world nightmare, and also limiting the fantasy world nightmare. Only later did Loya understand how dangerous it was at the time. In order to kill him, Illusion Nightmare did not hesitate to die with him. The world-destroying thunder struck by the source will leave the illusion with the last shred of vitality, so as not to completely collapse and wait for rebirth. However, the illusion can be recast, but he cannot. Fortunately, with Ivy's shot, Loya was saved from the end of the fall. So, the result now is, Ivy has become the master of this illusion. That's right or wrong, the illusion itself is conscious, and disappearing for a while doesn't mean that you can't wake up. So to be precise, it should be called the Heavenly Path Administrator. The source is damaged, no matter whether Loya falls or not, the illusion will gradually decay and then disintegrate and reorganize. The illusionary nightmare disappeared without a trace, and could only appear in the next rebirth. In order to prevent this fantasy from disappearing, Ivy used her body to mend the sky and became the new nightmare of One Piece's fantasy, that is, the administrator of Heavenly Path. Very bullshit. But it's a fact. After all, illusory world, just get used to it. While thinking about the answer, Loya communicated with Ivy. After becoming the management of Heavenly Path, Ivy can no longer communicate with Roha as easily as before. The position of Illusion Nightmare is absolutely neutral and cannot be refuted. Fortunately, Loya still retains the body of a dragon, and through the connection of flesh and soul, Ivy can barely communicate with him. How can I get you back, Mother? Don't worry, just don't make trouble for me. In the level of consciousness, Ivy's tone was calm. Although I am bound in this illusion, for me, it is not a relief. What do you mean by that? You guessed it. Loya. Fortunately, this guy hasn't changed at all except for his tone of voice. After a while of silence, Ivy continued, in the next time, I will help those characters who have reached their limits to grow and bring them to you. Actually, I forgot to tell you that the other half of my body, condensing all my evil thoughts, it is the incarnation of disorder and madness. There is still a big gap between you and her. So you need to form a team of 25 people to challenge the epic dungeon boss. Did you make a copy? I understand. But, Loya looked suspicious. Are you sure you forgot? Don't pay attention to these details. Listen, before you decide to start the fight, Zaku will open up a replica illusion and transfer you there. Ivy quickly changed the subject. After you start the fight, we can't interfere, everything it's all up to you. Also, pay attention to your sense of proportion. Although the copying illusion is tough, it is closely connected with this place and can easily spread over. This illusion is closely related to me, and if it is destroyed, the old lady will die. Zagu, the golden dragon. Loya repeated the name softly, and suddenly smiled. I will protect this world, I promise. That's it. Ivy's voice became weaker and weaker, not so full of anger that she was muttering to herself, but the volume was getting smaller and smaller. This means that illusion itself is cutting off the connection between her and Loya. As long as the source is not endangered, Illusion Nightmare must remain absolutely neutral. In the future, it's all up to you, Loya. In the end, Ivy said lovingly, the old lady will be watching you from the sky. Puff. At this moment, Loya's blood flowed back, and a mouthful of old blood rolled out. When that feeling disappeared completely, Loya lowered his head and murmured, watch me, Mom. I will make the name Christopher resound throughout the world. Loya, Loya. More than 10 minutes have passed since the soul contact, and the real world is only a few seconds. Robin pushed Loya's arm, the other hand shaking in front of him. Holding it, Loya said helplessly, don't make trouble, think about things. After a pause, Loya found that he had walked to the castle hall unknowingly, and Simon was reporting something to him. What did you say just now? I didn't pay attention. No shame at all. Simon looked at Loya in shock, looking like a dog. The world government is very happy that you ruined the historical text of the road sign. Antonio Caro sent a gift, and the messenger is outside. When it comes to destroying the Redstone and driving countless pirates into the abyss of despair, of course the happiest one is the world government that hides the truth. Both Ralph Drew and the historical text are real things that are hard to hide, and they are also their worries. Now that one has been destroyed by Loya, Carlo has to express his feelings and reason. However, playing cards according to common sense is not Loya. At this moment, I saw him nodded and dropped a sentence. Bring in gifts, people drive out. Suddenly, the envoy waiting outside the gate felt a chill in his neck and looked suspiciously at the group of working undead. What's the situation? Shouldn't some guy be interested in my 300 pounds of fat? No, my meat is stinky and not tasty. At this moment, a group of patrolling undead soldiers heard some news, and came towards him after the exchange. Then, without saying a word, one person picked him up and walked outside. What are you doing? I'm the messenger of Lord Carlo. After he said this, he thought for a while, The emperor of the new world of Loya didn't seem to need to be afraid of his master, and then quickly changed his words. I just a messenger, everything has nothing to do with me. My meat is not delicious, don't eat me. Shut up, I've used up my cannibalism quota this month. Don't make Lao Su angry. The leading undead soldier approached viciously, with cabalike empty eyes facing the fat messenger. Of course, if you take the initiative to dedicate yourself to eating for me, the Grand Commander also acquiesced to this rule. Quote. Cannibal. Amount. Alas. The smell of urine came from his crotch, and the fat man was terrified and closed his mouth like a quail. In the hall, Simon received a report and asked, he obviously came with a mission, why should he scare him? It's no longer necessary. Loya was playing with a golden sculpture, and with great strength, he squeezed the monkey into a fortune, and said, it's him, not Scylla, that has already shown what Karo means. You guys get ready, I'm going out for a few days. Where? Travel around the world. Chapter 673 Candidate. Ivy didn't reveal much information to him, but it was enough to make Loya understand that now he wants to challenge the legendary ancient weapon and Ivy's half-body. It's far from enough. This truth was only understood after he returned. Both are level 90, isn't there still a gap between players and NPCs? Especially the big bosses and boss-level monsters in the team dungeons in the game, which one can the player take on one-on-one? The system rules are there, and programmers won't give you any chance. Ivy didn't simply split her body at the beginning, and it was true that she had a fighting goal, but the most important thing was that she used half of her own strength as the source, set a seal, and put the other half of her body into the cold palace. This represents the half of the sealed dragon body. Her strength is intact, even if it decreases with the passage of time. It is a very terrifying level. And Loya, just a lucky one who got the body of the other half of the dragon, inherited an empty shell. After all, if this half-dragon body really has the power to match it, and there is no evil intention, where does Loya need to gradually integrate and develop? Just call the door and go there. However, since he wants to deal with the king, Ivy must have prepared a method for him. For example, in every version of World of Warcraft, those who take players' warriors into danger. Heroes. Commonly known as the son of the version. Take a chestnut. Human head dog Lao Fording. What Loya has to do now is to gather his teammates, and then find the head dog. Ah, old Ford. It was night, and Loya was sitting at the makeup table, carefully reviewing a whitelist. Each of the names listed above is a big man who shakes the world. These include world-famous admirals such as Aokiji, as well as pirates such as Hawkeye, Mihawk. These are the teammates scheduled by Loya, and they are also the top powerhouses who he thinks can break through the limit. But it seems that Loya is not satisfied with the list. After thinking about it, Loya picked up the pen again and added a few names at the end of the list. Seymour Jiji Village, Ishin Dojo, Kushiro. Chambord Islands, Pluto, Rayleigh. When he destroyed the historical text of the road sign in front of the world, he was ready to be called by Roger's old crew. However, after so long, they continued to hide in every corner of the world as if they didn't know anything. Loya has guessed about this situation, and I am afraid this is one of the last expectations of those guys who still refuse to give up the dream of One Piece. A few days ago, Drago told him that someone was spreading rumors. Said that Roger didn't rely on the Red Stone to find Ralph Drew, and he could become the Pirate King without the Red Stone. It is said that someone has hidden evil intentions and wants to rekindle this era of great destruction. By the way, since the end day, the era of the Great Pirate has officially changed its name. It's called Great Destruction Era. However, what Drago didn't know was that Roger really didn't find Ralph Drew with the guidance of the Red Stone. Listening to the voice of all things, this power, is something that even Loya cannot understand at this stage. That is a gift from the world, a gift, a mission. In fact, the real process is reversed. Roger followed the guidance of all things, found the historical text, and then became One Piece step by step. It was after that, before the dissolution of the Roger Pirates, that he found the Red Stone and most of the remaining historical text. Apart from Loya, the outsider who knew about this, only the crew members who followed Roger aboard Ralph Drew. In the New World, Shinx, who inherited Roger's legacy, did not move, and stayed at ease in his own territory to recuperate, so there is no doubt who said this rumor came from. Loya chose Rayleigh, not only to verify this, but also to see his combat effectiveness. Above the sea at the beginning, the only one who really stood at the peak was Whitebeard. In addition, it is Rayleigh, Roger, Carp First Class. After this world promotion, if you want to select candidates who are most likely to break through the previous restrictions, then they occupy the vast majority. I hope Sheila can give me a thorough understanding. I am now, how far is it? Have you encountered any problem? Robin came over wrapped in a towel after taking a shower. Picking up the list, Robin asked in surprise, "These people. What are you going to do?" "Robin, let me tell you something." Loya didn't answer, turned around and pulled her to sit down, looking into her eyes seriously. Rarely a little girl's panic, Robin's face flashed a trace of unnaturalness, and said, "Tell me, what's the matter?" "I want a baby," snapped. Rising Yuhi's face, Robin stood up in a panic, and trotted out of the room. Watching the door sway, Loya looked stunned. Why did I get slapped? But then again, a royal sister like Robin actually showed the side of such an innocent little girl. Touching the non-existent slap print on her face, Loya laughed madly. Hey hey, goo hey hey. Chambord Islands, after consultation with Jones and Lowe, decided to use the pronoun archipelago. After all, this place is originally an archipelago formed by tree roots, so you can't change the name just because there is a huge gap in the middle, right? Loya crossed the Yuhi soil continent along the valley of the Red River, looked at the merchant ships coming and going below, and nodded with satisfaction. The era of great destruction has opened, and the number of pirates has really become very small. There are fewer thugs roaming the sea, and business exchanges naturally become more frequent. The Chambord archipelago, which was almost destroyed by the aftermath, quickly recovered thanks to this shareholder wind. After all, in terms of commercial value, apart from certain countries, islands, and neutral trade zones, there is really no place comparable to Chambord. At the moment of Chambord, the original regional division is no longer applicable. Jones directly took control of a larger part of the archipelago with his big fists. That includes the bustling area of number 3050 in the past, which is very rich. The undead don't need to eat and drink, but Jones does. Finding the right direction, Loya landed directly on the island where the undead army was stationed. The connection in the soul made the undead raise their heads and look at a certain position. Then bowed respectfully to the ground. The people on the periphery did not understand what was going on, and they pointed and pointed. But soon, a figure appeared in the line of sight, making them hold their breath nervously. Because that is the Emperor of the New World, who single-handedly smashed the strongest person in the world, Ice Dragon, Loya in the era of great pirates. Then, rejoice. Lord Loya. Lord Loya, look here. For ordinary people, they can't see the position of Loya, they only know worship. But because they don't know this, they sincerely thank Loya who brought the change. You don't have to be scared every time you go out to sea. On Izumi Island, which is far away, go wherever you want. After the exchange activities have become common, it has brought countless business opportunities, and the people can fill their stomachs and even save some spare money. All of this is brought to them by Loya, and of course they are very grateful. At the same time, the Legion of the Undead was also welcomed by various islands when they played the blackface. Numerous evidences show that these dead bones are subordinates who obey Loya's orders, and they will only obey Loya's orders, which is undoubtedly more reassuring than those living people who are more vicious than undead. Jones was not surprised by this scene and shrugged. How about it? How does it feel to welcome you across the street? It's not bad, Loya said bluntly, and he doesn't need to worry about anything now. Where is Rayleigh? After receiving the news from you, he has returned to Shachi's ripping off bar to wait for you. Come on, let's go over. Chapter 674 Interview with Raleigh. Shachi's ripping off the bar. The proprietress Shachi stood behind the bar and silently prepared drinks for the two of them. Raleigh looked much older than ever, just overnight. Roger told him before turning himself in, "I'm not going to die." But it now appears that he was wrong. Riley didn't know what Loya was looking for him for, but he was full of doubts and wanted to ask clearly. After thinking about it, Raleigh said first, "If Whitebeard didn't open up that valley of the Red River, would you leave the Red Stone?" In that battle, Raleigh, in despair, was also grateful for Whitebeard's last act. The appearance of the valley of the Red River gave him a glimmer of hope. However, after a long time, Loya destroyed a piece of the Red Stone, so that there will never be any road signs to find. Ralph drew 1. Yes, the New World is no longer mysterious, and some caravans can travel between the two sides through the Red River Valley. But what's the point of pirates? They will never find the fourth coordinate. Ralph drew, will always be a mystery. Unless there is one person, like their captain, who can hear the voice of all things. But will there be a miracle? Faced with this question, Loya shook his head decisively. Destroying the Scarlet Stone is in my plan. Although it was a last resort, it really has nothing to do with Whitebeard. Why do you do this? Raleigh suddenly became angry. Are you really not leaving any chance? Why stay? Loya didn't answer, and asked with a sneer, "Are you a saint? Or are pirates all saints?" Pirates and Tianlong people are no different. In my eyes, you are all a group of maggots. A group of hopeless garbage. In the name of freedom and dreams, bringing pain and despair. You deserve to be. The era is out. Riley was silent. Indeed, Loya was right. Except for a very small number of people, pirates are really no different from Tianlong people. And even the Roger pirates. Not so clean. One of their crew members was an executioner who slaughtered a village, and as a result, he was regarded as a hero by the pirates because he got on Roger's ship. This kind of thing is ridiculously terrifying. They can justify themselves with their dreams and hopes, or they don't need to care about the opinions of ordinary people, as long as they are happy. But those dead people and burned villages really don't exist anymore. Riley remembered that when he and Roger first went to sea, they had a big fight with the Navy in a town. In the end they escaped, happily continuing their journey. But the person in charge of that island, implicated for malfeasance, died in his cell. The young daughter went from being the jewel in the palm of everyone's beloved to a servant of the rich family. They didn't know about this until a year later, and when they rushed back with the support of inexplicable motivation, all they saw was a tattered solitary tomb. Are they doing it right? Absolutely not. It's just that they don't dare to think about it and paralyze themselves with their dreams, that's all. Not all dreams are beautiful. Pirates are always pirates, synonymous with sin, not warriors and heroes. Loya sneered, peeling away the scars that Raleigh had hidden deep in his heart. When you were chasing your dreams, did you ever think about how many people were hurt by your actions? Anyone who doesn't know is innocent. No, you're just a bunch of cowards escaping reality. Enough. You don't know what we've been through. Raleigh suddenly shouted, trying to interrupt Loya's words. But suddenly, Loya pressed it back with a louder volume. None of my business. Looking at the stunned Raleigh, Loya was full of disdain. I only saw this era of the great pirates, the slaughtered civilians. I only saw this era of the great pirates, those orphans who lost their parents. I only saw this in the era of the great pirates, those beasts who are named in the name of dreams are disgusting and disgusting. Quote. Every word is heartbreaking, nothing more than that. After a pause, Loya's tone slowed down, and he sighed leisurely. No matter what the purpose is, you all chose a wrong path. Never give pirates such a sinful existence, add other meanings, because you don't deserve it. Roger, you don't deserve it. Yeah, pirates, it's always like this. No matter how fancy words you use to decorate them, they're not a good thing. What Loya said was arrogant, but very realistic. The act of calling a pirate a dream is ridiculous. However, Rayleigh still holds a glimmer of hope. You know, the truth. Bang! The wine glass in Shachi's hand fell to the ground, and the drink she had just prepared was scattered on the table. Looking at Rayleigh in surprise, Shachi took out the towel and packed it silently. I know what you're trying to say, Rayleigh. Loya said calmly. In fact, I know the truth, and the secret behind the truth. Then why do you still do this? Rayleigh frowned. Even if you want to eliminate those who do evil, you can leave this path behind, they will be your greatest help in the future. Knowing the truth, why did Loya destroy hope? Does he have the same purpose as those people? No, Rayleigh's sixth sense tells him that Loya is not the same as the Dragon Man. He did these things from the opposite position on the premise of knowing the truth. Why? Luoya thought for a while, picked up the wine glass that Shachi handed over again, and shook it slightly in the palm of his hand. Seeing that the different colors and distinct Jing liquors were blended together, and the little bits were indistinguishable from each other, Loya said, this thing is muddy, and the taste is worse. Mr. Riley, you have to know that sometimes, changing the world requires only one person. It's too complicated to do any good. What you can't do doesn't mean that others can't do it. Roger is like a star in this vast starry sky, but he will never be the last one. Just as Rayleigh was about to say something, Loya raised his head and drank the wine, and said to Shachi, thank you for your hospitality, this is the most delicious cocktail I've ever had. Then turn around and leave. Watching him walk away, Rayleigh's frown almost caught a fly. He understood the meaning of Loya's words, but he still didn't understand why Loya did this. He's looking for you for something else, Rayleigh. Shachi leaned on the bar with a cigarette in between. It's just that he changed his mind the moment he saw you. I know, but why did he come to me? Then I don't know. Shachi smiled slightly and picked up the remaining cup of Loya to drink. 5 kinds of poisonous poisons that can pollute an area of the sea are mixed together, and even the expression has not changed. I don't know what his purpose is, but I know that you can't stop what this monster is going to do. You. Closing his eyes, Rayleigh was lost in thought. After a long time, he said with a free and easy smile, you are right, we can't stop it. But there is still hope, and a miracle will happen. Senseless confidence. Shachi stared blankly at Rayleigh, shook her head, and picked up the wine glass. The Legion of the Dead is stationed in Joan's office. Picking up the information on the table, Loya flipped through it and said, sure enough, the Sea Kings that appeared in the Battle of Chihei were controlled by Sea Kings. That's right, we've locked the suspect, do you want to? Jones said, chopping vegetables with his hands. The ancient weapon, Sea King, the real body is a mermaid princess who can only appear in hundreds of years and can communicate with Sea Kings. Before Loya told them, Jones' goal was on the word, weapon, and he never thought in this direction. It wasn't until the Battle of Chihei that day, when I heard that the princess of Fishman Island cried because of the battle on the sea, and hundreds of large Sea Kings swam out of the deep sea and gathered outside the bubble of Fishman Island. Jones didn't notice this. A little. The reason why it has not been done is because it is a Fishman Island 10,000 meters below the sea. Abducting the mermaid princess Shirahoshi under the siege of the Sea Kings. Think about it and know what will happen. It's not necessary, it's just an innocuous little girl. Send someone to contact Neptune. I need the attitude of the Sea King, and their commitment. Attitude. Promise. Jones was stunned for a while, then suddenly, nodded and said, I see, I'll arrange it now. Chapter 675 Loya's Life. Rayleigh, like Whitebeard, is a figure who stood at the top of the world in the previous era. But obviously, the dissolution of the Roger Pirates and the birth of a new era made him relax his vigilance. It is like those high-level hermits who live in seclusion in the mountains, sitting in the thatched cottage in the mountain pavilion, watching the rising and falling of the clouds, and talking about heroes. In layman's terms, it's salted fish. So after the world was promoted, the upper limit was raised, but Rayleigh was still the same Rayleigh. It is even said that because of a series of blows, he is not as good as before. Coupled with old age and frailty, and lost the energy and vigor of his youth, Lililoa can only give one evaluation now. Unusable. So Loya decided to let him retire with peace of mind and didn't say anything. Ivy's powerful Loya is not very clear, because he can't see it through. But it is conceivable that before in the dream world, his soul alone had the power of an ordinary adult, so what level is Ivy who is stronger than him? As a host of that kind of power, what level should Ivy's half-body be? It's scary to think about. You are strong. This point is very clear to Loya. After the dragon body is completely integrated, there is no doubt that he is a soldier in graduation uniform. However, if Ivy can be so careful, that half-body will only be stronger. Not to mention, it is also an elite monster, even a leader monster. So Loya needs comrades, instead of a person to challenge everything. Brainless is indeed worthy of respect, but he cannot afford to fail. Since Rayleigh can't be used, it's time to find the remaining powerhouses. Just when Roja was looking for teammates all over the world, a secret letter was sent to almost all the well-known powerhouses in the world. Those are guys who are stronger than the current Rayleigh even if they don't break through. Naval Headquarters, Marshal's Office. Aokiji, Kizaru, Fujitora, and Green Bull, these four figures representing the strongest combat power of the Navy gathered together to hold an emergency meeting. In addition, there are two others, also sitting here. Karp and Zephyr. These two old men who showed up less than once a month rarely return to the Navy headquarters. It's not that they don't give Ching pheasant face, but that their hearts are dead and they have no more worries. But this time they had to show up because of Loya's letter. But what? I only sent invitations to the four of you. That kid looks down on me like that. Garp was digging his booger while eating donuts, unaware how disgusting he looked. Fortunately, the people present were not as highly qualified as him, and Zephyr was only of the same generation as him. Everyone pretended not to see it and thought carefully about Loya's letter. It was the first time that Fujitora heard the words, Dragon Slayer. He looked at Aokiji blankly and asked, what does the ice dragon mean? Could it be that there is still someone in this world who is him? Can't compete with it. Loya's letter has only one purpose, which is very succinct, and that is to call on everyone to unite and prepare for the war. But, that's how strange it is. A monster that stands at the top, without one, needs to unite their power. Who should be the opponent? Was that purple and black thunder that day? The letter sent to Qingzi said a lot. At this moment, he considered it for a moment and replied, we have been working on changing the world for a long time. I believe you have seen it now. We, representing Aokiji and Loya. There's no need to keep hiding this, because no one is a fool. This matter was discussed with me long ago before Loya graduated from the elite camp. Qingzi threw a blockbuster, and Zephyr was stunned when he heard it. But he was weak enough to make me laugh, and I believe he can do it, but it will take a long time. I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly. So, are you really sure that there are monsters like that in this world? Kizaru pouted with a vulgar expression. That's Loya, hey. So scary Loya. Yes, and yes. Aokiji held his hands. His lazy temperament gradually disappeared after he became a naval marshal, and his eyes were bright. He took his envelope and handed it to Sengoku's former pet goat to chew and swallow. I know what you're thinking, now I can explain. About Loya's life experience. Loya's background. Hearing this, the rest of the people sat upright, even Garp and Kizaru. For a long time, Loya's life experience has been a mystery. Even the Zephyr green pheasants and flying squirrels who are close to him have no clues. He suddenly appeared in this era, suddenly grew into a giant, and then suddenly wanted to change the world. Before you explain, do you know what the King of Heaven is? Ancient Weapon King. Garp touched his chin, remembering the information he had read before. I only know that the King of Heaven is different from Hades. It is a kind of creature, a powerful creature, and it can fly. Hearing this, the rest of the people's faces turned black. Bullshit. Zephyr said what they were thinking, then looked at the green pheasant, and said, "You mean, the King of Heaven is actually a giant dragon like Loya?" "Heavenly King, is it a dragon?" The three generals blinked blankly, then took a deep breath. "Yes, it does. The only thing that can make Loya so jealous is indeed the existence of the same dragon. Because it is a legendary creature, an existence they cannot understand. And not only a giant dragon, but a giant dragon stronger than Loya. As powerful as Loya, they must seek their help. Not only the dragon." Suddenly, Qingzi smiled bitterly. "Their connection is closer than you and I imagined. You must know that Luoya is a dragon slayer, but his identity as a dragon should be what's the explanation." "Ah, that's right. A giant dragon, the dragon slayer, mage. If you have something to say, just say it directly. Don't go around." Garp waved his hand impatiently. What bothered him most was procrastination. "Okay. Marshal." Aoki finally felt the feeling of Sengoku in the past, and the corners of his mouth twitched. After thinking about the words, Qingzi said slowly, "The King of Heaven has existed for longer than the world government, until the time when the world civilization was not yet civilized. At that time, the King of Heaven was not called the King of Heaven, but was called Edith by ancient humans. Synonymous with death and darkness. Later, slowly, the name Edith disappeared with the passage of time, and became known as the King of Heaven. All along, the King of Heaven has been active in the world, but it was not until 200 years ago that the King of Heaven disappeared." Quote. Aokiji took a deep breath and said solemnly, "It is divided into two parts, it has become two parts." "What?" Everyone was dumbfounded, and Garp exclaimed, "You mean that Loya is part of the King of Heaven?" Aside, Zifafa nodded silently. "The time is right, in the era of great changes in the world government, so it is." "Yes and no." Aokiji replied. "Loya represents the just incarnation of the king as a judge in the past. After all, before death, everyone is equal. The other part is the evil and chaos of ultimate, which is not controlled. Unrestrained. Moreover, it is not only the body that is separated, but the power and the soul. In order to protect this world, the part represented by Loya used all its power to set up a seal and seal it in Mary Joa. Now that he woke up from hibernation, he noticed that the seal was broken, so he invited us to join. He. Protect the world. Chapter 676 Change the world. Protect the world. Hearing this, the corners of the rest of the people's mouths twitched, with an expression that "I don't read too much, don't lie to me." However, they can't find a reason to refute. Because everything is right. The decline of the Antonio family, the appearance of the 5 old stars, Loya's life experience, and everything he did, all matched. It turns out that there is a monster in their world who wants to destroy the world. If Loya didn't wake up in this era, does it mean that the world is about to die? If the truth is as Loya said, then the old man must do his best and die. The representative of benevolence and justice, the general, Fujitora, with a strong sense of justice, was the first to express his attitude. This is not the ordinary protection of the people, but the protection of the world. Fujitora couldn't help himself. So, to believe or not to believe? Recalling what Loya had done, a smile appeared on Aokiji's face. Then trust him. That's not right. Carp suddenly exclaimed. Since he needs help, why didn't the old man receive an invitation? He really looks down on me, right? Hey, I'm so temperamental. The solemnity that had just appeared collapsed in an instant, and Aokiji looked at this scene speechlessly, his face black and oily. But what should he do? Tell Carp that's true. Loya explained in the letter that even if he does not have the same strength as him, he has to reach a certain limit. Several heavy injuries, old age and physical decline, plus the previous incident of Ace, he was disheartened. After the cold, there were big ups and downs, and now Carp is not only not at his peak, but the whole person is just a line from the salted fish like Rayleigh. Invite him to do what? Unlike himself and others, they are in their prime, the peak period of their lives. The oldest yellow ape has not suffered any blows, and his strength is well preserved, and he may go further at any time. But if you tell Garp the truth, he'll go to Turtle Island, right? Absolutely, right. Therefore, Aokiji decided to ignore it. Cough cough. Listen to me, everyone. Aokiji changed the subject decisively. The Antonio family may have noticed a little sign of this. But what they don't know is that what they used to summon and control the king is only the cooperation of the king. The game they played. Now all that's left is a pure destroyer. Before they foolishly open the seal, let's not stimulate them and try to improve our strength. Speaking of this, Aokiji smiled. It's been a long time, this feeling of desire to become stronger. Fujitora and the others were stunned for a moment, and then laughed in relief. That's right, this desire to get stronger. Really, it's been a long, long time. After the meeting was over, the rest of the people abandoned all tasks and hurriedly went to find a place to practice. Although the time is yet to be determined, what is certain is that there will be a day when the King of Heaven will break out of the seal. Before that, every time you increase your strength, you will have a little more confidence. In the corridor of the headquarters fortress, Aokiji comforted Garp, who was jumping up and down with excitement, and asked Zephyr, "Mr. Zephyr, are you waiting for me?" "Yes, are you free?" Looking at Garp, who was silent, Aokiji nodded with a wry smile on his face. "Come in and talk." The three did not return to the office, but just found an empty room and sat down casually. Looking at the green pheasant, Zephyr said straight to the point, "The King of Heaven is indeed a threat, but after that, what do you want to do?" I am afraid that other people have also thought of this question, but they will not bring it up. The butt decides the head, and at the same time decides the status. They, no doubt, are not enough. Sure enough, this is the problem. Qingzi shook his head and said, "Our plan is actually very simple. Scylla succeeds, strips the privileges of the Tianlong people, and reorganizes the world government. On this basis above, the navy, the army, and lawyer are just a foil." Quote. At the same time, Dorag and Sheila complement each other. Whoever crosses the line is out. In a calm and indifferent tone, what he said was an earth-shattering event. Even if Zephyr had a hunch, he was shocked by Qingzi's answer, and he couldn't come back to his senses for a while. After a long time, Zephyr said with emotion, "You guys are really brave. Changing the world, this is changing the world. The world government that has been deeply rooted for 800 years is like a plaything in their mouths." If someone else said this, Zephyr would not even have an expression. But Aokiji is different. He represents Loa, Sheila and Drago. What he said has that weight. It turns out that you have a connection with Dorag behind your back, so it's no wonder that you are in alliance with Scylla, so that's the case. For a while, Zephyr thought a lot, and his expression became melancholy. Seeing that my disciple is so good, should I laugh, or cry, or should I be dumbfounded? This is really hard to answer. Because the above four people are really all Zephyr's disciples. The best teacher ever. After thinking for a while, Aokiji said uncertainly, "Probably, just smile." The first half of the Great Route, Kraigana Island. Mention this name alone, and perhaps few people know where it is. The only remaining news is probably also related to the country that perished in the early years. People in the know will say with a side expression that man-made disasters are greater than natural disasters. But on the black market, a swordsman who buys the permanent pointer of Kraigana Island, will also welcome the seller's embarrassed expression. Because they all know that Kraigana Island is one of the 7 seas, the world's largest swordsman, Hawkeye, Mahawk's residence. The swordsman buys a permanent pointer to there. To put it mildly, it is to challenge the world's #1. It's ugly, that's looking for death. The forests of Kraigana Island can be so dense, and the corpses of these challengers must be irrigated by Mukuro. At this moment on this island, Mahawk held the envelope in one hand and the pendant knife in the other hand, casually resisting another challenger's attack. That relaxed and freehand look made Kiba tickle the other's anger, and the katana sword in his hand slashed down with each knife. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break through the finger-length toy knife in Mahawk's hand. Ding! Being repelled again, feeling the tearing pain from the tiger's mouth, the challenger finally understood that this guy was not something he could defeat. So he's ready to run away. However, just as he took a step, a terrifyingly sharp sword energy wrapped around him in an instant, and after 2 puffs, the challenger fell to the ground with a broken hand, crying non-stop. It was only then that Mahawk glanced at him lightly with those eagle-like eyes. The scar on your back is a shame for a swordsman. You who choose to escape are not qualified to be a swordsman again. After speaking, Mahawk turned and left the place. It is estimated that it will not be long before the group of baboons will pounce on him and tear him to shreds. At this moment, a cloud of smoke rushed out of the forest, but because the speed was too fast, his footsteps slipped, and he stayed in the air for 2 seconds. After landing, he spun and rolled. Mahawk took a small step back calmly to avoid it, letting the figure go all the way west, until it hit a big tree and stopped with a thud. Putting away the envelope, Mahawk looked at the man and said, "What? You haven't left yet." Chapter 677 Kushiro. Speaking of this incident, Zoro was full of fire, obviously he was running towards the beach. As a result, every time, he would return to the same place unknowingly. With Soren's stunned personality, he would only think that he had gone the wrong way. So he boldly assumed that as long as he buried his head and rushed to a place, he would definitely be able to rush out of the forest. But it turns out that it doesn't work. Damn it, what have you done to this forest? Xiaoqing's life force made Zoro pull out his head from the broken trunk and glared at Mahawk. Why did I run back every time? Are you a wizard? Mahawk. That is a look of pity. Even if he is as cold as Mahawk, there is a hint of softness in his eyes. Luna is so stupid, this child. So pitiful. Hey, what kind of eyes are you looking at? Zoroji and Kiba roared, and was ignored gorgeously. Seeing Mahawk walking straight towards the castle, Zoro touched his stomach and followed reluctantly. The two walked in the forest one after the other. The group of baboons who had been defeated by Zoro roared at him, and it was very lively for a while. To get out of the castle to the coast, you have to walk through the ruins in the forest and through the territory of the baboons. In order to leave, Sauron did not know that it took him several days to defeat them all and have the right to enter and exit freely. And like I said earlier, it's not very useful. It's a few hundred meters ahead, and the coast is through the bushes, but every time this guy changes lanes in a strange place, and then turns back. When he bumped into the other baboons, Sauron, who had nowhere to vent, directly took them and opened the knife. It was a miserable heaven and earth conscience. You are Luna, and it's none of our business. In order to get you out of the way as soon as possible, we have even set up the road signs. You should still get lost and continue to get lost. Shall we make a face? Watching the two walk away, the baboons disperse unwillingly. They are ready, and the next time they draw a path with feces, they must send this god of plague away. No matter how idiotic people are, it is impossible to step on it when they see feces, right? Back at the castle, Mahawk went to cook his own meals as usual. Although he is a big man, but living alone for so long, it is no problem to simply fill his stomach. Zoro didn't come to eat, he came to the kitchen. A few days ago, after verifying his grilling skills, he chose the easiest way to cook. No matter what his mess, as long as he eats, he throws it into the pot and simmers it on the fire. On several occasions, Mahawk saw some oddly shaped mushrooms floating in the soup. After that, he gave the pot directly to Sauron and called it a dog pot. While eating, Mahawk took out the newspaper. Loya's invitation to think about it. He is eager to fight against the strong, just because he wants to become stronger. If he added the name of righteousness or protection to the world, Mahawk would lose interest. Suddenly, however, Mahawk saw a report in the newspaper. A report on Loya. East China Sea. What is he doing there? Looking at the background buildings, the island is not very wealthy. Every household is a simple wooden house, and some are still patched on the wall. There are many such islands in the four seas, and Mahak doesn't think there will be any value there that is worthy of Loya's personal visit. Until he saw the figure beside Loya. Swordsman. A strong swordsman. Mahak's eyes lit up instantly. Even if it was just a photo, he could see the identity of the other swordsman. And from that gesture, it can be seen that the opponent is definitely strong. This is the new realm that Mahak has come into contact with after the promotion of the world. No matter how well the hares hide in the forest, they can't escape the eyes of those eagles. There is such a powerful swordsman in the four seas. Mahak became interested, read the report carefully, and murmured, Seymour Jiji Village, Yixin Dojo. Huh. Sauron, who was holding a bucket of suspicious goo-eating haze, raised his head instantly and asked in a daze, how do you know this name? It's written in the report, you know where it is. Mahak frowned first, then asked, then do you know who this guy named Kushiro is? Kushiro. In response, Zoro took a deep breath, that's my master. The enlightened teacher who taught me swordsmanship. Teacher. So, Mahak pondered for a moment and handed the newspaper to Zoro, then do you know how strong your teacher is? Ah, this. I've never seen the teacher make a move. Even if there is, it's just a general demonstration. Wait, this is the ice dragon, Loya. Zoro said a little. He opened his mouth awkwardly, but when he saw the figure standing alongside his teacher on the report, his eyes suddenly widened. Ice dragon, Loya go to Kushiro. Is there a relationship between them? Should not be. I haven't seen it before, it doesn't matter. Putting down his job, Mahak got up and walked towards the depths of the castle. The little wooden boat was broken by the baboons last time, and he had to move a new one out. Seeing his actions, Zoro didn't know why, but the swordsman's intuition told him that Mahak was now eager to fight people. What are you going to do? Go to your teacher and have a good fight. Zoro. Wait, please bring me one. Seymour Jiji Village and Loya basked in the sun in a leisurely manner. The ordinary people passing by and the disciples of the dojo saw his figure, held their breath, and crept around the wall. It's not that I'm too cowardly, it's that the opponent is too scary. Most of the people in the East China Sea still don't know the reputation of the four emperors, but Loya's reputation definitely resounds throughout the world. Otherwise, a major newspaper such as the newspaper would not put his appearance on the front page to please readers. When the students finally squeezed in and looked at the figure standing at the entrance, they suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Hello, master. Well, hello, let's go and warm up. Kushiro greeted the students with a smile, and then stood still with squinted eyes. The rest of the people shuddered and ran over with their heads buried in the air. Although Kushiro's smile is the same as usual, that expression is full of evil spirits. The target of this suffocating energy is naturally Loya, who doesn't consider himself an outsider in the yard over there, lying on the old man's chair to bask in the sun. When the last student ran into the dojo, Kushiro walked over with a smile, and said, Lord Loya, why do you have to be a big man like you? I'm just the boss of a small dojo, and I'm just eating. In front of Loya's prestige, Kushiro couldn't get up. However, it took 3 seconds for Loya to open his eyelids, hit Heish, and said with some distress. I didn't want to be so troublesome. If you don't agree, don't agree. But I'm a little reluctant. After all, you're the only one. After a pause, Loya's eyes flickered with light, causing Kushiro to subconsciously put his hands up. The only one. Who pushes the limits? Chapter 678. I have wine, do you have a story? Adding more rewards to the new helmsman Tiani Schwanchen. Thank you very much for your support. It's a bit painful to collapse in the back, but there is still such a loyal reader support. Dashu is very moved. Thank you. Dividing line. Even Loya did not expect that Kushiro's true power would be so powerful. Ben holds the theory that squinting is a monster, Combined with the performance of Zoro's transformation into a butterfly under Mihawk in the future, Loya believes that no matter how strong Kushiro is, he is no more than a great swordsman. The strength is comparable to that of a general, and it is also a talent, which can be used. But when he really stood in front of Kushiro, Loya slapped himself. What kind of talent is this? Simply genius. According to the plot of the original work, Guina is only 2 years older than Zoro. As her father, when Zoro is an adult, Kushiro is probably in his 50s. But when Roha came here, he found out that in front of him, Kushiro is at most 40 years old, maybe even younger. In this world, there are older men like Roger who get married and have children in their early 50s, but more people get married and start families early, and Kushiro is the latter. Loya asked the villagers that Kushiro was only 22 when Guina was born. What is this concept? Judging from the growth rate, Kushiro is no different from the real son of destiny like Luffy. Now, at the age of less than half 100, he has crossed the moat that is obstructing the world's heads. That's right, Kushiro, now he's a level 80 monster. The top powerhouse that the world can only accommodate after being promoted. Among the known Loya, other than himself, the only monster that has broken through the limit. It's such a pity that such a powerful combat power is not pulled on board. It's just that Kushiroji is not here, no matter how Loya persuades, he is not shaken. If it weren't for the strength that Roha showed was too amazing, and the two of them couldn't keep the island in a fight, Kushiro would probably shoot Roha directly and drive him back. Seeing Kushiro put his hand on the hilt of the wooden sword, and the invisible sword energy shot out from his slightly squinted eyes, Loya shook his head. Don't you really understand the reason why your lips are dead and your teeth are cold? Once we fail, the world will cease to exist. The things you cherish are meaningless in the face of a true apocalypse. But at least, this process is meaningful. Loya's murderous aura gradually diminished with his voice, and Kushiro also let go of his hand and naturally fell to his side. Squinting and looking up at the sky, Kushiro seemed to be lost in thought. After a long time, he continued, after Guina died, I swear that I will never draw a sword again in this life. Good sign. If you can speak, there is a chance. Loya's eyes flashed and he asked, I have wine, do you have a story? Kushiro. Before Kuina was born, Kushiro had only sailed the sea for 3 years. In those short 3 years, he met the woman he swore to protect his whole life. A woman who was hopelessly stupid but couldn't let him go. Both of them are swordsmen, obsessed with kendo and pursuing a higher peak of kendo. But Kushiro is different from her. He just enjoys the fun of learning kendo and indulges in the joy of fighting against strong men from all walks of life, while she is ambitiously eyeing the position of the world's largest swordsman. The #1 swordsman in the world at that time was not Mihawk, who was only in his 20s at the time. Although Mihawk was famous, he was limited to the swordsman circle. Standing at the top at that time was a white-haired old man named Antonio Dove. Later, Kushiro knew what the words, Antonio, meant. Like an idiot, a troublesome woman who has no talent but never backs down. A dumb boy who just wants to travel the sea and enjoy the fun of fighting against the strong, the two met so unexpectedly. Encounter, quarrel, separate, meet again, quarrel, separate, as if caught in reincarnation, entangled. At the time, Kushiro thought he was cursed, because he always came to her when she was in a desperate situation, and carried a lot of trouble for her. Knowing each other, meeting each other, and then making a vow to spend a lifetime together, everything seems so beautiful. The two came to the village where Kushiro was born, established a heart-flowing dojo, and lived their own little days. But this peace was shattered until one day, when she decided to challenge Antonio Do. As a swordsman, Kushiro won't stop him, but as a husband, Kushiro doesn't want her to be hurt. She was pregnant at that time, and the hand holding the sword had already started knitting baby clothes. But she is not reconciled that her life is such a dull past. She wants to prove herself for the last time before the child is born. Antonio Dove is a strong man known for his powerful slashes. It is said that even a hard object as hard as a sea tower can be easily slashed with a single sword. The war is coming. There are no gorgeous skills, and there is no powerful mystery. The two sides only collided with each other as a swordsman. But no matter how she attacked, or even said that the opponent gave up the attack because of the principle of not slashing women, it was just passive defense, and she couldn't break through that layer of sword light. As a swordsman stronger than his wife, Kushiro naturally understands why. Arm strength, the difference is too big. What Do walks is a slash, and his slash is so powerful that he is the best in the world. Even Kushiro was not sure that he would gain a single advantage in a head-to-head fight. As a woman, her innate arm strength is weaker than that of men, so she is naturally impossible. It was only after she collapsed with tears in her eyes that Kushiro understood how much the words, "World Number One," meant to her. For the sake of herself and her family, she seemed to have abandoned this dream, but she always kept it in her heart. What happened later is what was metaphorically mentioned in the original work. That battle exhausted all her physical strength, and she was exhausted and died after giving birth to Kuina. Before her death, she asked Kushiro to promise herself that her daughter would not follow her old path. She loves her family deeply, but she has no chance to be by their side. It was the first time in her life that she felt regret. Kushiro did the same, and kept saying to Guina, because of physical limitations, female swordsmen will never become the world's number one. This story is very long, and Loya drank for 3 days before listening to it. Every detail of the trip seemed to emerge before his eyes, and was explained one by Kushiro. There is no need for Kushiro to explain what happened later, and Loya also knows the process. The appearance of Zoro was just one reason, because he made Guina see the difference in arm strength between female swordsmen and male swordsmen. But he was the one who cheered Guina up and made up his mind, and promised that one of them would one day become the world's number one swordsman. Afterwards, one night, Guina, who was exhausted from exercising, was reluctant to let her mother's sword get covered with sand, and dragged her tired body up the stairs to find the whetstone, and then fell down at that time. Didn't wake up either. That sword is called Hidao Yuen. That woman, named Zoina. What do you think a sword is to me? Kushiro was already drunk, and he has been in this state for the past 3 days. The early morning sun shone on the pavilion, illuminating half of Kushiro's face. That's my favorite lover and my most hated enemy. After listening to this story, Loya smiled wryly and shook his head. In this case, it is indeed impossible. Kushiro's cups make him unable to do what a strong man can do. This is a poor man. But at this moment, Loya suddenly felt something. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and Loya sighed silently in his heart. Thank you, Mom. Then he said to Kushiro, you have been enduring it, right? Express your pain on that man. This way, it will feel better. In a trance, Kushiro's eyes lit up. That kind of sword stance, he will never forget it for the rest of his life. Antonio Dove. Chapter 679 Kushiro vs Mahawk. Hey, this speed is too much. How long will it run? On the coffin boat, Zoro hugged the boat Jinchuriki column tightly and swayed left and right like a kite by the oncoming wind. Mahawk sat upright on the bow, motionless, letting the sea breeze beat. From Kraigana Island in the first half of the Great Route to Seymour-Jiji village in the East China Sea, this distance takes about a month to sail even at the speed of a naval warship. That's it. It is the ultimate speed that the Navy can reach with the help of the ocean currents and sea breezes using a secret channel that has never been announced. But as soon as they went out to sea, an inexplicable storm appeared beside the boat. The storm didn't destroy the boat, but let it bounce out like a bullet. 3 days. Just 3 days. The two ran from Kraigana Island to the East China Sea, and even said that just ahead, the outline of Seymour-Jiji village has emerged. After sitting quietly for 3 days, the sword intent on Mahawk became stronger and stronger, making Zoro unable to look directly. At this moment, Mahawk grabbed his neck and turned his face forward. Little devil, is that the village of Seymour-Jiji? Yeah, wait, how is that possible? How long have we set out? Zoro replied subconsciously, and then looked into the distance for a moment. Feeling timid near the hometown, suddenly, Zoro had the urge to jump off the boat and swim away. Although there is no sign of, do not become the world's largest swordsman and will not come back, but just after a fiasco, the members of the pirate group fell apart, which made him really shameless to face Jiangdong's elders. This feeling reached an ultimate when he saw the figure on the coast. PFF'd. Whoa! The storm stopped in an instant, and the coffin boat drifted slowly towards the coast. Zoro showed a touch of green above his head from the sea, and swam furtively into the distance. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that the eyes of the two people at the moment only had each other and the other's sword. At the same time, the other one who was watching the fun had never looked away from him since he appeared. In the sea water, Sauron suddenly shivered. He looked down and saw that the seawater under his feet was constantly freezing, and the effort of bowing his head had spread to his calf. Crap, what the hell is this? With a hard effort, the ice cube didn't move at all. Zoro could only watch as he was frozen, and only the part above his chin was left on the sea to pant. I seem to have memories of this kind of power. Zoro thought of this, and then one person grabbed his collar and dragged him and the entire piece of ice under him up. Staring at the nightmarish face in front of him, Zoro twitched the corners of his mouth and asked, "Why are you here?" "Me, come and see the fun." Loya replied with a smile, then interrupted, "Shush, don't make a fuss. Let's stay away. Look." What to see? Suddenly, Zoro remembered something, turned his head to look at the place where Kushiro and Mihawk were facing each other. His eyes were round, "Isn't it? Master, he wants to fight Mihawk." In Zoro's heart as a child, Kushiro was very strong, so powerful that he couldn't imagine it. But as he grew up, Kushiro became less mysterious in his eyes. Probably not strong, right? Sauron thought so. Because the only time he saw Kushiro make a move was when his swordsmanship reached a bottleneck, and when he asked Kushiro for advice on the way behind, Kushiro showed him the profound meaning of cutting iron. It was also that demonstration that made Zoro ready to leave. That kind of profound meaning cannot be explained by the master, and the swordsman needs to comprehend it himself. The village of Simorjiji was peaceful as usual, and Sauron stayed here without getting any exercise. So when I heard that Kushiro was going to fight Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, Zoro's expression was like this, Sigma _D. Are you crazy? Do you think I'm stupid? I haven't read a book, but I'm not stupid, you can't lie to me. However, following Roha's line of sight, the knife that he had never seen before was held in the master's hand, and Zoro suddenly hesitated. It looks like it's really going to be a fight. Walking towards Kushiro step by step, Mihawk slowly put his hand on the handle of the black knife Yi. Then he stopped abruptly, because he was already close to the opponent's sword domain range. Going forward, Mihawk is not sure of surviving. After standing still, Mihawk asked in a deep voice, "Your Excellency is Kushiro?" "Well, if you're looking for the owner of Yi Shinryu Dojo, then I'm right." While speaking, Kushiro's squinting eyes slowly opened, and the sword intent that shot out made Mihawk his expression was solemn. "Antonio Ju, is that your master?" "Exactly." "That's good," Kushiro said with a relaxed smile. "After all, I have sealed the knife. If I cut the wrong person, wouldn't it be a joke? Then, please. Please." In the distance, Zoro looked dumbfounded and looked at both sides of the confrontation stupidly, having lost his language ability. What is this all about? Master Kushiro seems to make Mihawk very afraid. That is, Hawkeye, Mihawk. The world's #1 great swordsman. It can make him feel jealous, can it? Look well, study hard, and then become stronger. Loya squatted beside him and patted the green algae with his hands. In this way, when you enter the new world, you will die with dignity. Zoro shivered, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Ignoring Zoro, Roha stood up and said to the two who were about to start, let go of fighting, I've stopped the time in this area. The aftermath of the battle between the two great swordsmen is very dangerous, and Seymour Juji village can't bear it. Mihawk wouldn't care about it, but Kushiro would. Hearing this, he nodded to Loya, thank you. After this battle, I will definitely join your team. That would be great. Loya stroked her palm and laughed. When Mihawk heard this sentence, his expression was unmoved. Your Excellency seems to think that you will definitely survive. Huh, Kushiro turned his head slowly and smiled slightly, yes. Laugh. Before he finished speaking, an orange-yellow flame emerged from the void. The Black Knife Yi, one of the world's #1 famous swords, the 12 masters of the Supreme Sword, and a bland and unremarkable, like an ordinary blacksmith made at random. The weapons collided. This knife is called Sanryu, one of the 12 craftsmen of the Supreme Sword. It is 73.6 centimeters long and weighs 3 kgs. Due to the age, the material cannot be verified. The stalemate with the world's largest swordsman, Kushiro still looking relaxed. But when it came to this, his expression became a little colder. I have this sword, and I have defeated more than 370 enemies, and I have not lost a single defeat. However, I was finally defeated by your master. The enemy Kushiro spoke of was just a powerful swordsman worthy of his memory, but the number of more than 370 made Mihawk put a smile on his face. This knife is called Heidaoyi, one of the 12 great swordsmen. It is 180 centimeters long and weighs 13 kgs. At this moment, Mihawk suddenly exerted strength in his hand, swinging the knife wildly dance. The two immediately fought on the spot for several times, and the continuous blade light formed a light curtain, which shattered the atmosphere. In my lifetime, I have defeated 1,372 enemies, and I have never had a defeat. When he said this, the look on Mihawk's grim face was called, proud. Seeing this, Loya asked Zoro, you swordsmen are all like this. Even how many enemies you have defeated? Ghost knows. Zoro watched nervously when the two of them started. Hearing this, he turned to Byakugan, I won't remember it anyway. Chapter 680 Gap. Chapter 680 _ The ancients said that people are like swords and swords are like people. Loya has always thought so, because this is what a guy named Gurren said. A qualified swordsman, his sword naturally reflects his master's style to some extent. Just like the master of the Black Knife Knight, Jorakal Mihawk, there is nothing unstoppable, no slashing, sharp and unstoppable. Commonly known as domineering exposed. Kushiro's Sanryu is the opposite, flat and indifferent. From the outside, I am afraid no one will believe that this will be one of only 12 supreme swords in the world. The word, Hidao, on Zoro's waist, one of the 21 great swordsmen, although it is also simple Wuchen, but still reveals a certain murderous aura in the elegance, very much like Zoina. In the face of Mihawk's inexplicable determination to win, Kushiro felt amused, but he was also aroused by the pride of the past. That's right, he is Dove's disciple after all, even if the disciple doesn't necessarily have to follow the same path as the master, but if there is no such victory or defeat, no swordsman can reach the point where he is today. So Kushiro decided to get serious. One-hearted thorn. Hum. The sharp buzzing burst out suddenly, and under close contact, Mihawk only felt a big hand stirring in his head, making him dizzy. Under Mikazuki's bland appearance, hidden is Kushiro's rock-like firm belief. As soon as he came out, Mihawk could only see a white needle piercing, and the skin was wrinkled with goosebumps, and it was difficult to even control his breathing. So strong. This kind of swordsmanship is simply unheard of. The sense of crisis made Mihawk excited. In addition to meeting the bottleneck and needing to fight to break through this time, he wanted to find someone to fight. Kushiro fully meets his standards, and even far exceeds it. Staring at those falcon-like eyes, Mihawk forcibly pulled his body, followed the direction of the sword tip, and placed the black knife Yi in front of him. Ding! The tip of the sword pressed against the body of the sword, and a group of bright orange-yellow sparks flashed past. An indescribable force rolled up Mihawk's arm along the blade, causing him to frown. Then, a pain came from the tiger's mouth, and that strange force suddenly erupted, pushing Mahak back several meters. His feet were still in the same position as before, but the whole person moved a few meters away, and it was all Kushiro's thorns that pushed him out. As a disciple of Antonio Do, it was the first time that Mahak was restrained in a head-to-head confrontation. Yes, restraint. Kushiro's swordsmanship is very simple, it is only a thrust of the basic swordsmanship, but it leaves no room for Mahak's slashing power at all. This is not a mere skill gap, but a difference in the realm above, Tao. However, the stronger the enemy, the more excited Mahak became. He felt that with just one move, his bottleneck loosened a little. If he can survive this battle, he will surely step into a new peak. For now, enjoy the fight. Woo, shish. The wide black knife Yi turned in his hand, and the first thing Mahak stopped was to make a horizontal cut. His slash is the source of his confidence, Izumi. Even if Kushiro's realm is higher than him, he doesn't believe Kushiro can block it head-on. This is a qualitative change caused by a quantitative change. A turquoise sword light shot out, and Zoro couldn't see a trace even with his eyes widened. But Kushiro saw it clearly, and even said it was very easy. Looking at the sharp sword energy, Kushiro felt a little sad, it's a familiar slash. Seeing that the sword light was about to reach his body, Kushiro stepped back with his left foot, and his body shifted slightly, forming a small gap with the previous figure. However, it was this gap that made Mahak's eyes widen in disbelief. Because of his slash, it was empty. In a state of stillness, Seymour-Jiji village did not suffer any damage, but the sea in the distance was opened by this slash to a gap several kilometers long. At this moment, Kushiro moved. I saw him cross a distance of several meters in an instant, appeared in front of Mahak, and lifted Sanryu up. One-hearted flirting. It's still a simple basic sword move, and Zoro has to practice it thousands of times every day. But he knew very well that this mediocre sword was completely different from the practice he had done. Mahak is also aware of this, his eyes are slightly lowered, and he wants to break it open with his own slash. But at this time, his sixth sense made him stop turning his wrist. Frowning, Mahak once again blocked the black knife Yi in front of him. Ding! The two supremely sharp knives collided again, and Mahak, who was clearly more dominant in wrist strength, was swept away by Kushiro's sword and rolled out. So strong. Unbelievably powerful. Zoro had only this thought, because he had a confrontation with Mahak after he went to sea, and he knew what it meant to do such a thing. Equally shocked was Mahak himself. Although he has stepped out of his own school and is no longer restricted to simple slashing, most of his swordsmanship and basics are derived from Antonio Ju, his master. Only he himself knows how much advantage their lineage has in battle. That kind of slashing with force also represents an unshakable defense. At the same time, this sword move also represents a bigger flaw, making it easier for opponents to target. However, even if there are flaws in the previous self, Mahak's eagle eyes can see through the flaws and make up for it quickly. He didn't dare to say that he was flawless now, but at least no swordsman could be as easy as Kushiro. But, that's what he needs, isn't it? The will in those eagle eyes was so strong. After 2 consecutive moves, Kushiro sighed regretfully. Unfortunately, you are still a little short. If your master is still alive, you can probably fight me. No need. Getting up from the ground a little embarrassed, Mahak wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and placed the black knife Yeshu in front of him again. If the gap persists, it means I am. Please. At this time, Mahak didn't notice that his eyes were so similar to Zoro's. Kushiro returned to the days when Zoro just appeared many years ago. Where's the curator? I'm here to play. Damn it. Remember me. I will swing my sword 5,000 times tomorrow, and I will never lose to you again. Kushiro looked up at the sky and let out a long breath. Then go on. Thorn, split, flirt, sweep, cut, hang, collapse, point, wipe, lift. The two collided again, and all kinds of basic swordsmanship were used in Kushiro's hands. Mihawk was exhausted to deal with it, but he was still unable to break through the sword light swayed by Kushiro. There were more and more knives on his body, dyeing the lining of the windbreaker Yuhi color even more vividly. With the help of Loya's ice cube to avoid the surging sword energy, Zoro murmured and asked, "How is it possible? Master Kushiro, is he pressing Mihawk to fight?" "So, where are you looking?" Roha looked at Zoro speechlessly, and he seemed to overestimate the talent of Green Algae Head. He is very hard-working, and his kendo talent is also very strong, but his understanding, it's really weak and pitiful. However, perhaps this is the reason why he is getting stronger and stronger. No talent is not scary, what is scary is that you don't have talent and don't work hard. Thinking of this, Loya gave him a rare pointer and said, "Look carefully, who are the cracks in the sword energy left on the sea?" Zoro stayed for a second, then took a deep breath. "It's all Mihawks."